The morning had started with hope. That was the cruelest part. Lydia had woken before dawn in the small bedroom she'd grown up in, the one with the window that overlooked the eastern pasture where the sun came up gold and promising. Her mother had been dead 3 years. Her father was barely hanging on, his mind slipping away piece by piece like water through cupped hands. But today was supposed to be different. Today was supposed to be the beginning of something better. She'd put on the dress, her mother's dress, carefully preserved, smelling faintly of cedar and lavender. The lace was delicate against her skin, yellowed slightly with age, but still beautiful, still full of promise. Her hands had trembled as she'd fastened the tiny pearl buttons up her spine, her reflection in the spotted mirror showing a woman who looked braver than she felt. The church was only 2 miles from the ranch, close enough to walk, though her father's foreman had hitched up the wagon and driven her there with an awkward gentleness that had made her throat tight. The whole town would be there. Everyone who'd watched her grow up, who'd known her mother, who'd seen the Cross family ranch struggle through drought and debt and her father's slow unraveling. But Thomas would be waiting. Thomas Mackenzie, with his steady hands and his practical mind and his promise that marriage would solve everything. He'd take over the ranch management. He'd handle the creditors. He'd give her stability, security, a future that didn't involve losing everything her family had built. She hadn't loved him. Not really. But she'd been grateful, and maybe that was enough. Maybe love was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. The church had been full. She'd seen that through the window of the back room where she'd waited, heart hammering while the Reverend's wife had fussed with her veil, every pew packed, the Hendersons and the Pratts and the Yates family all dressed in their Sunday best, the Miller brothers standing near the back, hats in their hands. Even old Mrs. Chen from the general store, who rarely left her counter, and then the Reverend's wife had come back in, her face strange, her mouth working around words that wouldn't come out right. "He's... Lydia, dear, there's been... Thomas isn't..." The floor had tilted. The room had gone distant and underwater. "He's gone," the woman had finally managed. "He left a note with his brother. He said he couldn't. He said he was sorry." The rest was a blur of humiliation so complete it had almost been transcendent. Walking out to face all those people, still in her mother's dress, still wearing the veil, the collective intake of breath, the whispers starting immediately, spreading like infection. Pity in some eyes, satisfaction in others. The town had watched the Cross family fall for years now. This was just the final act. She'd kept her spine straight. She'd thanked everyone for coming. She'd apologized for the confusion, her voice level even as something inside her had been screaming. And then she'd climbed back into that wagon and let the foreman drive her home in silence so thick it had felt like drowning. That had been 4 days ago. Now Lydia stood in the ranch yard staring at the broken fence that ran along the north pasture. The cattle had gotten out again last night, 12 head wandering onto the Garrett property, and she'd had to swallow her pride and ask their ranch hands to drive them back. They'd done it with poorly concealed amusement, probably adding it to the growing list of reasons why the Cross Ranch was finished. Her father was in the house, sitting in his chair by the window. He'd asked her 3 times this morning if her mother was coming home soon. Each time, Lydia had reminded him gently that Mama was gone. And each time he'd looked at her with fresh confusion, as if the information couldn't stick anymore. The foreman, Pete, had quit yesterday. He'd been apologetic but firm. He had a family to feed, and the Cross Ranch couldn't pay him anymore. They were 2 months behind on wages. The bank was making threatening noises about foreclosure. The creditors were circling like crows over carrion, and Lydia was standing in a dusty yard in her work dress, staring at a fence she didn't have the money to fix, or the hands to replace, feeling something hardening in her chest that was either resolve or rage, or possibly both. "Lydia!" She turned to see Nancy Pratt riding up the drive, side saddle on her pretty bay mare, parasol already deployed against the morning sun. Nancy had been at the wedding. Nancy had been one of the first to start whispering. "Nancy," Lydia kept her voice neutral. "I wanted to check on you." Nancy's tone was dripping with concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone's been so worried after what happened with Thomas." "I'm managing." "Are you?" Nancy glanced around the yard, taking in the broken fence, the peeling paint on the barn, the general air of barely controlled collapse. Only, I heard Pete left, and I know your father isn't, well, it must be so difficult. I'll figure it out. Of course you will. You're very strong. Nancy paused, adjusting her parasol. You know, Robert Garrett has been asking after you. Lydia's jaw tightened. Robert Garrett, who owned the biggest spread in the county, who'd been trying to buy out the Cross Ranch for years, who was 53 years old, twice widowed, and looked at her like she was a piece of property to acquire. That's kind of him. He's very respectable, very stable. A woman in your position, well, you need to be practical, don't you? Nancy's smile was sharp. You can't run this place alone. Everyone knows that. Everyone seems to know a lot about my business. People talk, Lydia. It's a small town. Nancy gathered her reins. The church social is tomorrow. You should come. It wouldn't do to hide away. People might think you're ashamed. I'm not ashamed. Of course not. Why would you be? It's not your fault Thomas realized he'd made a mistake. Nancy's voice was sweet as poison, though I suppose people will always wonder what he saw, or didn't see. She rode off before Lydia could respond, leaving a trail of dust and casual cruelty in her wake. Lydia stood there, hands clenched at her sides, feeling the anger rise up hot and choking. This was her life now. This was what she'd become. The jilted woman, the object of pity and gossip, the struggling rancher everyone knew was going to fail, the Cross family falling apart for public entertainment. She walked to the barn, needing to move, needing to do something with the fury burning under her skin. The building was dim and cool, smelling of hay and leather and the particular musk of horses. They still had three: Dancer, her mother's mare; Buck, the old gelding her father had ridden for 20 years; and Spitfire, the young bay stallion they'd been trying to break before everything fell apart. Spitfire watched her from his stall with suspicious eyes, ears back. He'd been abused before they got him, rescued from a trader who'd beaten him bloody. They'd thought they could gentle him, but it took time and patience and consistent handling, and lately there'd been none of those things available. I know how you feel, Lydia said quietly, approaching his stall. Everyone's given up on you too. The stallion snorted, tossing his head. I haven't given up, she continued, surprised by the conviction in her own voice. I don't quit. That's not who I am. The horse didn't look convinced. That night, Lydia's father asked for her mother 4 more times. Each time was a small death. Each time reminded her that she was losing him too, not all at once but in increments, pieces of him disappearing until one day he'd look at her and see a stranger. She made him soup that he barely touched. She helped him to bed. She sat in the kitchen afterward, staring at the ledger books she couldn't balance, the bills she couldn't pay, the future she couldn't see. The church social was tomorrow. Nancy was right about one thing: hiding would only make it worse. If she didn't show up, the gossip would intensify. The pity would calcify into certainty that she was broken, finished, defeated. She had to go. She had to hold her head up. She had to prove to them, to Nancy and Robert Garrett and everyone else, that she wasn't done yet, even if she had no idea how she was going to survive the next month, let alone save the ranch. The church social was held in the town square, a dusty stretch of packed earth surrounded by Blackwater Ridge's collection of weather-beaten buildings. Tables had been set up under canvas awnings, loaded with pies and preserves and covered dishes. A small raised platform served as both stage and auction block, depending on the event. Today, it was auction day. Lydia arrived alone, driving the wagon herself because there was no one else to do it. She wore her second-best dress, dark blue cotton that was practical and plain. Her hair was pinned up tightly. Her face was composed. She looked, she hoped, like a woman who had her life together. The stares started immediately. She could feel them like physical touches, sliding over her as she climbed down from the wagon. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Nancy Pratt was holding court near the dessert table, and her voice carried clearly across the square. Brave of her to come, really, after the humiliation. Lydia kept walking, spine straight, heading for the lemonade table where at least she could occupy her hands with a cup and look like she had a purpose. Miss Cross, Robert Garrett materialized at her elbow, impressive in his tailored coat despite the heat. I'm pleased to see you. Mr. Garrett, I've been meaning to call on you to discuss a business proposition. His eyes were calculating behind their veneer of concern. Your situation has weighed on my mind. My situation is fine. Is it? He smiled, showing teeth. I heard Pete quit, and I know the bank is getting impatient. You're in an impossible position, my dear. A woman alone trying to run a failing ranch, caring for an invalid father. It's too much. I can manage. Can you? He moved closer, lowering his voice. Let me buy the ranch, Lydia. I'll give you a fair price. Enough to set you and your father up comfortably somewhere else. You could move to Sacramento, find a gentler life, find another husband, perhaps. I don't want another husband. No? His hand touched her arm, proprietary. Everyone needs companionship. I'm a widower. You're now unattached. We could come to an arrangement that would benefit us both. Lydia pulled away, revulsion crawling up her spine. I'm not interested in arrangements, Mr. Garrett, or in selling. You will be, when the bank forecloses, when you have nothing left. His voice hardened. I'm offering you a way out before you lose everything. Consider it carefully. He walked away, leaving her shaking with anger and something very close to fear because he wasn't wrong. The bank was getting impatient. She was out of options. Don't listen to him. Lydia turned to find Sarah Miller, one of the few women in town close to her age, holding 2 cups of lemonade. She offered one to Lydia. Robert Garrett's been trying to buy up every small ranch in the county, Sarah continued quietly. My brothers think he's got investors from back east, wants to build some kind of empire out here. He's going to succeed with mine if I can't find a way to make payroll. You need help. I can't afford help. There might be a way. Sarah glanced toward the platform where Mayor Henderson was climbing up, preparing to start the day's auction. The work auction. They're selling day labor contracts. Some of the men here are willing to work cheap just to have a place to stay through winter. I can't even afford cheap. Some of them are desperate. Maybe you could negotiate something. The mayor's voice boomed across the square. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. We have a fine selection of workers today. Good men looking for honest employment. Let's begin with... Lydia half listened as the auction started. Men climbed up onto the platform one by one. Ranch hands, farm workers, drifters looking for seasonal work. The bidding was quick and businesslike. $1 a day plus room and board, 75 cents, 50. The desperate ones went cheap. She couldn't afford any of them. Now, this next one's interesting, the mayor said, his tone shifting. He's not local. Showed up 2 days ago, wouldn't give a name. Sheriff checked him, no warrants, nothing obvious, but he's... Henderson paused, searching for words. Well, you'll see. 2 of the sheriff's deputies half-dragged, half-walked a man up onto the platform. The crowd went silent. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway. His clothes were worn but clean, dark trousers, a shirt that might have been gray once, boots that had seen hard miles. His hair was dark and shaggy, hanging past his collar, but it was his face that stopped conversation, scarred. A vicious line ran from his left temple across his cheek, pulling slightly at the corner of his mouth. Another crossed his jaw. These weren't neat surgical scars. These were violent survival, damage that had healed badly because there'd been no doctor, no time, no care. And his eyes, dark, flat, assessing the crowd with the kind of wariness that came from expecting trouble and usually finding it. He won't talk, the mayor said, sounding irritated. Hasn't said a word since he arrived. But he's strong, looks healthy enough. Could be useful for heavy labor if someone's willing to take a chance. The crowd murmured, uncomfortable. The man on the platform didn't react, just stood there with his hands loose at his sides, watching them all with that flat, unreadable gaze. Do I hear a bid? 25 cents a day? Silence. 20 cents? Nothing. People were shifting away, uneasy. The scarred man was too much, too damaged, too unknown, too dangerous looking for a town that liked things safe and predictable. 10 cents? Henderson's voice held frustration. Come on, folks. Winter's coming. Man needs work. He looks like an outlaw, someone called out. Sheriff cleared him, Henderson shot back. No warrants. That we know of. Maybe there's a reason he won't talk. Send him on to the next town. We don't need trouble here. Lydia watched the man's face. Nothing changed in his expression, but something in his eyes shifted. A flicker of resignation, maybe. Expectation. He'd heard this before, been rejected before. This was familiar territory. She thought about Nancy Pratt's cruel smile, about Robert Garrett's calculating offer, about the town's whispers and pity and their certainty that she was finished. She thought about standing in that church, abandoned, humiliated, while everyone watched her fall apart. She thought about rage. "I'll take him." Her voice rang out clear and loud. The crowd turned, shocked. Henderson blinked. "Miss Cross?" "I said I'll take him. The full contract, room, board, and—" She paused, calculating what she could barely afford. 25 cents a day. "Lydia, that's—" Sarah started. "Do we have a deal, Mayor?" Henderson looked between her and the silent man on the platform. "You sure about this? You don't know anything about him. I know he needs work and I need help. That seems like enough. He could be dangerous. So can I." Lydia kept her eyes on the scarred man. His expression hadn't changed, but he was looking at her now, really looking, as if trying to figure out what game she was playing. "Do we have a deal?" "If you're certain?" "I am." "Then, sold, to Miss Lydia Cross." Henderson banged his gavel, looking troubled. "Contracts for 3 months unless either party terminates early. Standard terms." The crowd was buzzing now, whispers louder than before. Lydia ignored them. She walked toward the platform as the deputies released the man, who climbed down with easy grace despite his size. Up close, he was even more imposing, broad-shouldered and solidly built, with the kind of controlled strength that suggested he knew exactly what his body could do. "I'm Lydia Cross," she said. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once, acknowledgement without commitment. "Can you talk?" Another pause, then a slight shake of his head. "Won't or can't?" He held up his hand, made a gesture, his throat, then a cutting motion. "Something happened to your voice." She studied him. "But you can hear fine?" A nod. "And you can work?" Another nod, more emphatic. "Then we'll figure out the rest. Can you ride?" He nodded again. "Good. Come on." She turned away, heading for her wagon, aware of the entire town watching her walk away with the dangerous-looking stranger. Nancy Pratt's voice carried clearly. "She's lost her mind completely. First the wedding, now this. It's pathetic." Lydia kept walking. Behind her, silent as shadow, the scarred man followed. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. The man, she needed to call him something, sat in the wagon bed, apparently comfortable with the arrangement. Lydia didn't try to make conversation. What would be the point? He couldn't respond. But she was aware of him back there, a solid presence, and aware too of what she'd just done. She'd bought a man, contracted him, legally, but it felt uncomfortably close to purchase. 3 months of his labor for room, board, and 25 cents a day that she didn't really have, and she had no idea who he was, where he'd come from, or what had happened to leave him scarred and silent. Maybe Nancy was right. Maybe she had lost her mind. "I'm going to call you Rowan," she said finally, surprising herself. The man who wouldn't sell the ranch before us was named Rowan. He was stubborn as hell. It seems fitting. In the mirror, she saw him cock his head slightly, considering. Then another small nod. Acceptance or indifference, she couldn't tell. The ranch looked even more derelict when they pulled in. Lydia saw it through new eyes, his eyes, the broken fence, the weedy yard, the peeling barn. The whole place screamed failure. "It's not much," she said, climbing down, "but it's what we've got. Bunkhouse is there. Hasn't been used in a while, but it's dry. I'll get you blankets. You can stable your horse." She paused. "Do you have a horse?" He shook his head. "Right. Well, you can use Buck if you need to go anywhere, but mostly you'll be working here. The fence needs repair. The north pasture needs clearing. The barn roof is leaking. She stopped, hearing herself list disasters. "Everything needs work. I can't pay you much, and I can't promise you'll get it regularly, but you'll eat and you'll have a place to sleep. That's the deal." Rowan looked around the yard with that same flat assessment, taking it all in. Then he looked at her and nodded once. Agreement. Okay then. Lydia felt something loosen slightly in her chest. I'll show you the bunkhouse. Then we need to get those cattle moved from the east pasture before... The front door banged open. Her father stood on the porch, white-haired and confused, wearing his nightshirt in the middle of the afternoon. Margaret? He called. Margaret, where have you been? It's Lydia, Papa. She moved toward him quickly, gently. Mama's not here, remember? But I heard the wagon. I thought... His face crumbled. Where is she? Come inside, Papa. It's too hot out here. Who's that man? Her father's voice turned sharp, suspicious. What's he doing here? He's helping with the ranch. Come on now. Lydia guided him back inside, acutely aware of Rowan standing motionless in the yard, watching. Let's get you settled. It took 20 minutes to calm her father down, to convince him to take his medicine, to get him back to his chair by the window. By the time Lydia returned to the yard, she was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. Rowan hadn't moved. He was still standing by the wagon, patient as stone. Sorry, she said. My father's sick. His mind is... He gets confused. Rowan nodded slowly, understanding, maybe, or at least acceptance. The bunkhouse is this way. She led him to the small building behind the barn. It was rough, 4 bunks, a potbelly stove, a single window thick with dust, but it was shelter and the roof was solid. I'll bring blankets and something to eat. She paused in the doorway. Why did you come to Blackwater Ridge? He looked at her for a long moment, then shrugged, a gesture that said he didn't know or didn't want to say, or maybe both. Are you running from something? His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. She'd struck close to truth. I don't care what you're running from, Lydia said quietly. As long as you work and you don't bring trouble to my door, we're square. Deal? Rowan considered her, then extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was careful, controlled, the hand of a man who knew his own strength and how to measure it. Calluses rough against her palm, a scar across his knuckles. This was either the stupidest or the bravest thing she'd ever done. Welcome to the Cross Ranch, she said. Try not to let it kill you. The corner of his mouth might have twitched, almost a smile, some almost. Rowan started work the next morning before dawn. Lydia woke to the sound of hammering and found him already at the north fence, pulling rotted posts and digging new holes with methodical efficiency. He worked without stopping, without complaint, with a kind of relentless focus that was almost unsettling. By noon, he'd replaced 20 feet of fence line that she'd thought would take days. By evening, he'd cleaned out the barn's flooded back corner, fixed the broken gate on the chicken coop, and rehung the bunkhouse door that had been sagging for months. He didn't speak, didn't slow down, just worked with the kind of intensity that suggested he needed to move, needed to be useful, needed to exhaust himself into sleep. Lydia brought him food at midday, bread, cheese, the last of the smoked ham. He ate quickly, efficiently, then went back to work. You don't have to kill yourself, she said. We've got 3 months. He looked at her, then at the ranch around them, and the message was clear. 3 months might not be enough. He wasn't wrong. That night, Lydia sat with her father at dinner. He was having a good day. He recognized her, remembered what year it was, asked intelligent questions about the ranch. These moments were becoming rarer. She treasured them even as they hurt. You hired someone? He asked, watching through the window as Rowan crossed the yard toward the bunkhouse. We needed help. He's big. Looks like he's been through hell. Probably has. Her father was quiet for a moment. Your mother would say you're taking in strays again. Like Spitfire? Like every wounded thing you ever found. He smiled slightly. She worried about that. Worried you'd get hurt trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I'm not trying to fix him. I just need someone who can work. Her father didn't sound convinced. Be careful, Lydia. A man with that many scars usually earned them. I know. Do you? He looked at her seriously. You're angry. I understand that. What Thomas did was cruel, but don't let anger make you reckless. I'm not being reckless. I'm being practical. We needed help. He needed work. It's business. Is it? She didn't answer because she wasn't entirely sure herself. Had she hired Rowan because the ranch needed him, or because Nancy Pratt had looked at her with such pity, and Robert Garrett had made his calculating offer, and the whole town had written her off as a broken woman who'd never recover? Maybe both were true. The pattern established itself over the next week. Rowan worked from dawn until long after dark, tackling the endless list of repairs and maintenance that had been piling up. He was skilled, more than skilled. He could do carpentry, metalwork, animal handling, things that took training and experience. He moved cattle like he'd been born to it, gentle and firm at once. He rebuilt the broken fence with joints so tight they'd last decades. And he never spoke. Lydia tried a few times to communicate beyond basic gestures. She brought him paper and a pencil, thinking he might write what he couldn't say. He shook his head, handed them back. Either he couldn't write or wouldn't, and she didn't push. They developed a language of sorts. Nods, head shakes, pointing. His face remained mostly expressionless, but she started to notice small things. The way his shoulders tensed when he was frustrated, the slight narrowing of his eyes when he was concentrating, the rare, almost smile when something worked out right. He was always careful around her father. The old man's confusion didn't bother him, or at least he didn't show it. When her father called him Michael or John or once, heartbreakingly, Margaret, Rowan just nodded and went about his business. "He's patient," her father said one afternoon, watching Rowan work. "Patient men are dangerous." Why dangerous? Because patience takes control, and control means discipline. That kind of discipline comes from somewhere. He looked at her. Military, maybe, or prison. Lydia had wondered the same thing. The way Rowan moved, the way he assessed situations before acting, the way he kept his back to walls and always knew where the exits were. It all suggested training, or survival, or both. But he worked hard, and he didn't cause trouble, and he was saving her ranch piece by piece, so she didn't ask questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. The town noticed, of course. Nancy Pratt made a special trip out to the ranch 2 weeks after the auction, ostensibly to drop off a pie, but really to snoop. "He's still here," she said, watching Rowan repair the barn roof. "I thought surely you'd have sent him away by now." "Why would I?" "Lydia, Nancy lowered her voice. "No one knows anything about him. He could be anyone. A criminal, a deserter, dangerous. He's been nothing but helpful. So far, but men like that..." She made a vague gesture. "They're unpredictable. And you're here alone, essentially, with your father in his condition. It's not safe." "I can take care of myself." "Can you?" Nancy's eyes glittered with malice disguised as concern. "People are talking. They're worried about you. Robert Garrett mentioned he might speak to the sheriff just to make sure everything's proper here." "Robert Garrett can mind his own business." "He's trying to help. We all are. We just want to see you settled, Lydia. Safe. Married to someone respectable who can protect you." "I don't need protection." "Everyone needs protection." Nancy collected her empty pie plate. "Just think about it, before something happens that can't be undone." She left, taking her poison-sweet concern with her. Lydia stood in the yard, fists clenched, fury rising. Rowan climbed down from the roof, hammer in hand. He looked at her questioningly. "They want me to fail," Lydia said, surprised by her own vehemence. "The whole town. They want me to give up, sell out, disappear. Prove them right that I was always too weak to handle this." Rowan set down his hammer, waited. "But I'm not weak, and I'm not quitting." She looked at him directly. "I don't care what they say about you or me or this ranch. We're going to make this work." "Agreed." He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded, slow and deliberate. Agreement. Partnership, maybe. Belief. The real trouble started 3 weeks in. Lydia was in town buying supplies, flour, salt, nails, trying to stretch her dwindling funds far enough to cover necessities. She'd left Rowan working on the irrigation ditch that fed the south pasture. Her father was having a bad day, and she'd locked him in his room as gently as possible, hating herself for it, but knowing he'd wander otherwise. The general store was quiet. Mrs. Chen weighed her flour without comment, but her face was pinched with disapproval. "That's $8.40, she said. Lydia counted out the money carefully, aware she was almost out. "Thank you." That man you hired, Mrs. Chen said abruptly. The silent one. My husband says he saw him fight. Lydia went still. Fight? Behind the saloon, 2 nights ago. 3 men tried to start something with him. He put all 3 down in under a minute. Mrs. Chen's expression was troubled. He didn't just win, Miss Cross. He destroyed them, broke bones. The doctor was up all night setting fractures. They started it, you said. Yes, but the older woman hesitated. The way he fought, it was professional, brutal. My husband said it was like watching an execution. Lydia's stomach tightened. Is anyone pressing charges? No. Sheriff said it was self-defense, but people are scared now. They're saying you brought a killer onto your land. He's not a killer. He's a ranch hand. Is he? Mrs. Chen looked at her seriously. Do you really know that? Do you know anything about him? I know enough. I hope so, for your sake. Lydia left with her supplies, her mind churning. Rowan had fought 3 men, one decisively, brutally, and hadn't mentioned it, though how could he without a voice? She drove home faster than she should have, the wagon bouncing over ruts. She found Rowan exactly where she'd left him, waist deep in the irrigation ditch, digging with steady rhythm. He looked up as she approached, reading something in her face. He climbed out slowly, waiting. I heard about the fight, she said. His expression didn't change. 3 against 1. You won. A single nod. Did they start it? Another nod. Did you have to break their bones? He looked at her for a long moment, then made a gesture. Them, aggressive motion. Him, defensive. Outcome, inevitable. You're saying if you'd held back, they'd have kept coming? Yes. So you ended it definitively? Yes. Lydia studied him, the scars on his face, the careful control in every movement, the violence implied by his efficiency. You've done this before. Fighting. Not a question. He nodded anyway. Military? A pause, then a slow nod. Something happened, something that left you. She gestured at his throat. His face closed down, that flat expression sliding back into place. He turned away, moving back toward the ditch. Wait. She touched his arm, felt him tense. I'm not judging, I'm asking, because people are scared and I need to know. Are you dangerous? He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. His eyes were dark and unreadable, but there was something in them that might have been pain. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up and tapped his own chest, then pointed at her. Back to himself. A question. Am I afraid of you? Lydia translated. Yes. She thought about it, about the way he worked himself to exhaustion, the way he was careful around her father, the way he'd put down 3 attackers efficiently but then came back here and went right back to digging ditches, the way he looked at her sometimes, like he was expecting her to flinch, to reject him, to prove that trust was stupid. No, she said, I'm not afraid of you. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or disbelief. But I need to know something. She kept her hand on his arm. Are you going to bring worse trouble here? Is someone chasing you? Someone who'll come looking? His jaw tightened. He looked away, then back. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. Who? He made a gesture. Uniform, authority, but not law. Something else. Military, she thought. Someone from his past. Are they close? A shrug. He didn't know. Will they hurt my family if they come here? His face hardened. He shook his head emphatically, then made a gesture. Himself, leaving. Protection through distance. You'd leave to keep us safe. Yes. That's not the deal we made. The deal was 3 months, room, board, and 25 cents a day. She looked at him seriously. I don't break my deals. Do you? He stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language, like the concept of someone keeping faith with him was incomprehensible. Do you? She repeated. Slowly he shook his head. Then we're staying the course. If trouble comes, we'll handle it. Together. She released his arm. Now finish that ditch. I need to check on my father. She walked away, heart pounding, aware she'd just committed them to something potentially catastrophic. But she'd meant what she said. She didn't break deals. And she was so damn tired of being afraid, of being careful, of letting other people dictate what she could handle. Behind her, silent and unmoving, Rowan watched her go. And maybe, just maybe, started to believe her. 2 days later, everything changed again. Lydia was in the kitchen when she heard the scream, high, terrified, a child's voice. She ran outside to find a scene of chaos. One of the neighbor's kids, a girl maybe 8 years old, was lying in the dirt near the barn. Her mother was kneeling beside her, crying. A small crowd had gathered. It was Sunday, people passing by on their way home from church. "What happened?" Lydia pushed through. "She fell off the wagon, hit her head." The mother's face was white with terror. "She won't wake up. Oh God, she won't wake up." The child was unconscious, pale, blood matting her hair. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. "Someone needs to ride for the doctor," Lydia said. "He's 15 miles. Rowan appeared, moving fast. He knelt by the child, his big hands surprisingly gentle as he examined her head. The crowd muttered, uneasy. "Get away from her," someone said. Rowan ignored them. He was checking the child's pulse, her pupils, the wound itself. Then he looked up at Lydia, made a series of quick gestures. "I don't understand," she said. He made them again, more emphatic. Pressure, elevation, time, critical. "You know what to do?" He nodded. "John, he's a savage," someone protested. "Don't let him touch her." The child's mother looked between her unconscious daughter and Rowan's scarred face, terror and hope warring. "Can you help her?" Rowan nodded. "Then do it, please." He moved fast after that, completely focused. He had someone bring water, clean cloth. He cleaned the wound with hands that didn't shake, applied pressure to stop the bleeding. Then he made a gesture. Splint, support, careful movement. "Her arm's broken too," Lydia translated, beginning to understand his hand language. He fashioned a splint with wood and cloth strips, immobilizing the arm. The whole time he worked, his face was concentrated, distant, somewhere else. This wasn't a ranch hand doing first aid. This was training, muscle memory, someone who'd done this before under worse circumstances. The child's breathing steadied, her color improved slightly. "She needs a doctor still," Lydia said. Rowan nodded. Made another gesture. Soon, but stable now. "You bought her time." "Yes." The mother was crying harder now, relief mixed with fear. "Thank you. Thank you." Rowan just nodded and stood, stepping back. The crowd was staring at him with new eyes, still frightened but also confused, uncertain. This didn't fit their narrative of the dangerous drifter. "That was remarkable," said a voice from the back. Lydia turned to see Dr. Brennan pushing through, his bag in hand. "I got here as fast as I could. Who did the emergency work?" "Rowan did," Lydia said. Brennan looked at the silent man, then at the child's stabilized condition. "This is good work. Military field medicine?" Rowan hesitated, then nodded. "Thought so. You bought her the time she needed." Brennan knelt to examine his patient. "I'll take her from here, but you may have saved her life." The crowd was muttering now, less hostile, but still uneasy. They didn't know what to do with a man who could both break bones and save lives, who looked like violence but acted with precision and care. Nancy Pratt's voice cut through the confusion. "It's convenient, isn't it, that he happened to be here, that he knew exactly what to do, almost like he's a skilled man who helped a child," Lydia interrupted coldly. "Would you prefer she died while we waited?" "Of course not. I'm just saying, you're just spreading poison because you can't stand seeing something good happen that doesn't fit your narrative." Nancy's face flushed. "I'm concerned for your welfare, Lydia. This man is dangerous, no matter what pretty picture you try to paint. He just saved a child's life. Today. What about tomorrow? What about when his past catches up? What about when—" "Enough." Robert Garrett's voice carried authority. He'd appeared at the edge of the crowd, mounted on his expensive horse, watching the scene with calculating eyes. "Miss Cross? A word?" Lydia walked over reluctantly. Garrett dismounted, took her arm, too familiar, too proprietary, and led her aside. "That was dramatic," he said quietly. "A child was hurt. And your hired man played hero. Very convenient. His grip tightened slightly. I've been making inquiries about him. No one knows where he came from. The sheriff can't find any record. It's like he doesn't exist. Maybe he values his privacy. Or maybe he's hiding something worth hiding. Garrett's voice hardened. I'm going to say this once, for your own good. Send him away. Today. Before whatever he's running from lands on your doorstep and destroys what little you have left. No. Lydia, be reasonable. You don't know this man. You don't know what he's capable of. I know he works hard and he just saved a child and he's the only reason my ranch hasn't fallen apart completely. Your ranch is falling apart anyway. The words were cruel, calculated. You can't pay him. You can't pay anyone. The bank is going to foreclose within the month. This is finished, whether you admit it or not. Lydia pulled her arm free. Is that what you came to say? I came to make you an offer. One last time. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Marry me. I'll pay off your debts, take care of your father, give you security. You'll never have to work yourself to death on this failing ranch. You'll have comfort, status, everything you're throwing away out of stubborn pride. I don't love you. Love is a luxury neither of us can afford. This is about survival. His eyes were hard. Take the offer, Lydia, or watch everything you have disappear. Those are your choices. He walked back to his horse, mounted smoothly, and rode off. The crowd was dispersing, taking the injured child and her grateful mother with them. Only Rowan remained, standing near the barn, watching Lydia with that unreadable expression. She walked over to him slowly, suddenly exhausted. Thank you, she said, for helping her. He nodded. Where did you learn to do that? He made a gesture. Army, battlefield, necessity. You were a medic? A shrug. Not exactly, but close enough. How many people have you saved? He looked at her for a long moment, then held up both hands and made a gesture that could have meant dozens or hundreds or too many to count. And how many have you killed? His face went blank, closed. He turned away. I'm sorry, that was unfair. Lydia touched his arm again, felt the same tension. I'm not judging, I'm just trying to understand. He didn't turn back. Robert Garrett wants me to send you away. Nancy Pratt thinks you're a threat. Half the town is scared of you. She paused. Are they right to be scared? Slowly, Rowan turned. He looked at her directly, and for the first time she saw something raw in his eyes. Not anger, grief. He made a careful gesture. Yes. Then another. No. You're dangerous, but not to me. Yes. Not to anyone who doesn't deserve it. He hesitated, then nodded. Then we're staying the course. Lydia kept her voice firm. Let them talk. Let them worry. We have work to do. Rowan studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found must have been enough, because he nodded slowly. Then, for the first time since she'd met him, he did something unexpected. He smiled. It was small, brief, pulling at the scar on his cheek, but it was real, and it transformed his face completely, showing the man he might have been before violence and silence had claimed him. Then it was gone, and he was turning back to the barn, back to work, back to the careful control that kept him safe. But Lydia stood in the yard, heart pounding with something that wasn't fear, watching him go and thinking that maybe, just maybe, she'd done the right thing after all. Even if it ended up costing her everything. The child survived. That should have been the end of it. A good deed, a moment of crisis averted, life moving forward. But in Blackwater Ridge, nothing was ever that simple. Word spread fast about what Rowan had done. Some people softened their stance, began nodding to Lydia in town instead of whispering. Others grew more suspicious, their fear sharpening into something uglier. A man who could save lives with that kind of precision could just as easily take them. The question wasn't whether he had the skill, it was whether he'd use it. Lydia tried to ignore the tension. She had more immediate problems, like the fact that she'd just paid Rowan his first week's wages and now had exactly $3.17 to her name. The banknote was due in 12 days. She needed $200. She might as well have needed $2,000. She was in the barn, grooming Dancer, when she heard the wagon. Through the open door, she saw the Hendersons arriving, their faces grave. Mayor Henderson climbed down slowly, his wife Martha staying seated, her hands twisted in her lap. "Miss Cross," Henderson called, "might we have a word?" Lydia set down the curry comb and walked out into the afternoon sun. Rowan was working on the far fence line, but she saw him pause, watching. "What can I do for you, Mayor?" Henderson removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "This is difficult. You've had a hard time lately, and Martha and we don't want to add to your troubles. But you're going to anyway. It's about your hired man." Henderson glanced toward Rowan. "There's been talk, concerns. He saved the Miller child's life. We know, and we're grateful, but that doesn't change the fact that no one knows who he is, where he came from, why he can't speak." Henderson's voice dropped. "Or won't speak. There's a difference. He's a good worker. That's all that matters." "Is it?" Martha spoke up, her voice tight with worry. "Lydia, 3 men ended up in the doctor's office with broken bones after confronting him. And yes, he helped little Sarah Miller, but the way he moved, the things he knew, that wasn't just any man with basic knowledge. That was someone with extensive training, military training." So? "So we need to know what kind of military." Henderson put his hat back on. "I'm asking you officially as mayor. Do you know anything about this man's past? Anything at all that might tell us whether he's safe to have around?" Lydia felt anger rising, hot and sharp. "You mean, do I know if he's a criminal? A deserter? A murderer? I mean, do you know anything that would help us trust him?" "I trust him. Isn't that enough?" "No." Henderson's voice was firm. "Because if something happens, if he hurts someone, if his past catches up in a way that damages this community, you're not the only one who'll suffer. We all will." Martha leaned forward. "We're worried about you too, dear. You're out here alone with him, with your father unable to protect you. What if— I don't need protection from Rowan." "How can you be sure?" Henderson asked. "You hired him on impulse, knowing nothing about him except that he looked desperate, and you were angry. That's not exactly a foundation for trust." "He wasn't wrong." Lydia hated that he wasn't wrong. "I'm giving you 1 week," Henderson continued. "Find out who he is. Get something, a name, a history, a reason to believe he's not going to bring disaster down on all of us. If you can't," he paused, "then I'll have to ask you to let him go. For everyone's safety." "You can't do that." "I can. I'm responsible for this town's welfare. I won't apologize for that." They left, taking their ultimatum with them. Lydia stood in the yard, shaking with frustration and something close to fear, because what if they were right? What if she'd been so determined to prove her strength, her independence, that she'd invited real danger onto her land? Rowan had stopped working. He was watching her from across the pasture, too far away to have heard the conversation, but close enough to read the tension in her body. He started walking toward her, his stride easy but purposeful. She met him halfway. "The mayor says I need to find out who you are," she said without preamble. "Your real name, where you came from, why you're running. He's given me a week or he'll make me send you away." Rowan's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went flat and distant. "I don't want to send you away, but I need something, anything." She kept her voice level. "Help me out here. Give me a reason to keep fighting for you." He looked at her for a long moment, then turned and walked toward the bunkhouse. "That's not an answer," she called after him. He didn't stop. Lydia stood in the empty yard, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down. She needed Rowan. The ranch needed him. But the town wouldn't let her keep him without answers, and he wouldn't give her answers. And somewhere in that deadlock, everything she'd been building was going to collapse. She went inside to check on her father. He was sitting in his chair, staring out the window, lucid for now. "You look troubled," he said. "The town wants me to send Rowan away." "Do they?" It wasn't a question. "And what do you want?" "I want to keep him. He's good for the ranch, good at his work." "That's not what I asked." Lydia sat down across from him. "I don't know what you're asking." "Yes, you do." Her father's eyes were clear, seeing too much. "You're not fighting for a ranch hand, Lydia. You're fighting for something else." "I'm fighting to prove I'm not weak, that I can handle things on my own. Are you?" He leaned forward slightly. "Or are you fighting because that boy out there is as broken as you feel, and you can't stand the thought of being the one who breaks him further? The words hit harder than they should have. Lydia stood abruptly. I need to make dinner. Running away doesn't change what's true. She left the room, her father's words following her like ghosts. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed listening to the sounds of the ranch, cattle lowing in the distance, the wind rattling the loose board on the barn, the house settling around her. And underneath it all, a question she didn't want to answer. What was Rowan to her, really? She rose before dawn, dressed quietly, and went outside. The bunkhouse was dark, but she could see a faint glow through the window, lamplight, or maybe firelight from the stove. He was awake. She knocked, waited. The door opened slowly. Rowan stood there in his shirt sleeves, suspenders hanging loose, his hair disheveled from sleep or lack of it. He looked surprised to see her. Can I come in? He hesitated, then stepped back. The bunkhouse was spare but clean. He'd made it his own in small ways, his bedroll neat, his few belongings organized, a book lying open on the small table. She was surprised by the book. He couldn't speak, but he could read. Another piece of information, another small mystery. I'm not here to interrogate you, she said. I need to understand. He waited, wary. Henderson gave me a week. After that, if I can't vouch for you, you have to leave. She looked at him directly. But I don't want you to leave. This ranch needs you. I need you. So I'm asking, not as your employer, but as someone who's trying to trust you, please give me something, anything. Rowan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something had shifted. A decision made. He walked to his bedroll, pulled out a small canvas bag, and removed something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a battered metal tag on a chain. Military identification. He handed it to her. The tag was worn, the lettering faint but readable. Sergeant Rowan Cade, 5th Cavalry, United States Army. Rowan Cade, she said softly. That's really your name. He nodded. 5th Cavalry. Where were you stationed? He made a gesture. West, desert, far away. Arizona Territory? Yes. What happened to your voice? His face closed down again. He touched his throat, made a cutting gesture. Someone cut you. Yes. Who? He made a gesture. Uniform, officer, authority. Then another gesture, one that was unmistakably violence. Betrayal. An officer did this to you? Yes. Why? Rowan's hands moved quickly, telling a story in broken gestures that Lydia struggled to follow. An order. Refusal. Civilians. Children. Massacre prevented. Punishment. Court-martial. Escape. You refused an order, she said slowly, piecing it together. An order to hurt civilians. To kill them. And when you refused, your commanding officer, she looked at the scar on his throat. He tried to kill you. Rowan nodded, his jaw tight. But you survived. And you ran. Yes. Are they looking for you? Another nod, slower, more reluctant. Will they find you? He met her eyes. Eventually his expression said, sooner or later. Lydia held the identification tag, feeling its weight. This changed things. He wasn't a criminal, at least not in any way that mattered to her. He was a soldier who'd chosen conscience over orders, who'd paid for that choice with his voice and his future, who was running from a system that would rather destroy him than admit its own corruption. This officer, she said. Does he have a name? Rowan took the tag back, flipped it over. On the reverse side, scratched roughly into the metal with something sharp, was a single name. Harrow. Harrow's the one hunting you. Yes. What will he do if he finds you? Rowan made a gesture across his throat. Final. Absolute. Then we make sure he doesn't find you. He looked at her sharply, surprised. I told you, I don't break deals. 3 months, room and board, 25 cents a day. She handed the tag back. Keep this safe. I'll tell Henderson enough to satisfy him, that you're former military, honorably serving, nothing to worry about. I won't mention Harrow or the court-martial or any of it. He shook his head, emphatic, made a gesture, danger, her, unacceptable. I know it's dangerous. I'm doing it anyway. He grabbed her arm, not roughly but firmly, and made the gesture again, pointing at her father, at the ranch, then himself leaving, protection through distance. No. She pulled free. You don't get to decide what I can handle. That's not how this works. He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. I spent 3 years watching my mother die slowly. I spent every day since watching my father forget who I am, piece by piece. I stood in a church in front of everyone I know and got abandoned at the altar because I wasn't worth staying for. Her voice was shaking now. I have lost and lost and lost, and I'm done losing. You stay. We face whatever comes together. That's the deal. Rowan's expression had shifted into something complicated. Disbelief, maybe, or fear, or something dangerously close to hope. Do you understand? She pressed. He nodded slowly. Once. Acceptance or surrender, she couldn't tell. Good. She turned toward the door, then paused. Thank you for telling me, for trusting me. When she glanced back, he was still standing there with the identification tag in his hand, watching her like she was something he couldn't quite believe in. She went back to the house, her heart racing, aware that she'd just committed to something with consequences she couldn't fully predict. But she'd meant what she said. She was done losing, even if holding on cost her everything. The next morning, Lydia rode into town. She found Mayor Henderson at his office, sorting through papers, and laid it out simply and cleanly. His name is Rowan Cade, Sergeant, 5th Cavalry, formerly stationed in Arizona Territory. His voice was damaged in the line of duty. He's not a criminal, not a deserter, not a threat to this community. He's a soldier who served honorably and needs a place to work while he recovers. That's all you need to know. Henderson looked at her carefully. You're certain? I'm certain. And you trust him? Completely? I trust him to do his job and not hurt anyone who doesn't deserve hurting. That's enough. Henderson was quiet for a moment. All right. If you vouch for him, I'll accept that. But Lydia, if anything happens, if there's any trouble, then I'll take responsibility. Is that what you want to hear? I want to hear that you're being careful, that you're not letting other factors cloud your judgment. Other factors? You're lonely. You're angry. You're in a vulnerable position. Henderson's voice was gentle. I don't want to see you hurt again. Then trust me to know what I'm doing. She left before he could argue further. On her way back to the wagon, she nearly collided with Robert Garrett coming out of the bank. Lydia, he caught her arm. I was hoping to see you. I'm busy. This won't take long. He steered her slightly away from the street, lowering his voice. I heard you gave Henderson information about your hired man. Former military, you said. How did you? I have ears everywhere. His grip tightened. Former military means records, means people who can verify his story or contradict it. What are you saying? I'm saying I've sent some telegrams, made some inquiries. I'll know who Rowan Cade really is within the week. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And if I find out he's lied to you, that he's dangerous, that he's put you at risk, I'll make sure everyone knows, including the sheriff. Lydia pulled free. Why do you care so much? Because I'm trying to protect you, even from yourself. He moved closer, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. You're making bad choices, Lydia, driven by pride and stubbornness and some misguided need to prove you don't need help. But you do need help, and I'm offering it, honestly, genuinely. Marry me. Let me take care of all of this. You'll never have to worry again. I'd rather die alone than marry you. His face hardened. That can be arranged. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her cold despite the morning sun. She drove home faster than she should have, the horses sensing her agitation. Rowan was in the south pasture when she arrived, moving cattle from one section to another. He saw her face and came over immediately, questioning. Robert Garrett's making inquiries about you, she said without preamble. He's sent telegrams. He's trying to find out who you really are. Rowan's expression went dark. How long do we have before Harrow hears about it? He held up his hands, thinking. A week, maybe 2 if lucky. Not long. Then we need a plan. If Harrow comes here... He shook his head sharply, made a gesture, himself leaving, tonight, protecting her through absence. No, We've been through this. He grabbed her shoulders, not gently this time. His eyes were intense, almost desperate. He made the gestures again. Danger, death, her father, the ranch destroyed. All because of him. All preventable if he just left. And go where? Keep running forever? Until Harrow catches up anyway and you're alone when he does? Rowan's grip loosened. He looked away, jaw tight. Or we stand and fight, together. And maybe, just maybe, we win. Lydia? Her father's voice came from the porch. He was standing there in his nightshirt again, confused. Why are you shouting? She pulled away from Rowan. I'm not shouting, Papa. Come inside. Who is that man? Why is he touching you? That's Rowan. He works here. Remember? I don't know any Rowan. Her father's voice was rising, agitated. Get away from my daughter. Rowan had already stepped back, hands raised, non-threatening, but her father was advancing now, unsteady but determined. Papa, stop. It's fine. It's not fine. Strange men on my property putting their hands on my daughter. Where's my rifle? You don't have a rifle, Papa. Come inside. Please. It took 15 minutes to calm him down, to coax him back into the house, to get him settled in his chair with a blanket and a cup of tea he wouldn't drink. By the time Lydia came back outside, Rowan was gone, back to work, giving her space to handle her father's crisis. She stood on the porch, exhausted and frightened and angry at everything. At Thomas for leaving her, at Garrett for his threats, at Harrow, whoever he was, for hunting a man who'd only tried to do the right thing, at her father's illness for stealing him away piece by piece. Most of all, she was angry at herself, for caring, for getting invested, for letting Rowan become something more than just a hired hand, something she couldn't afford to lose. Her father's words came back to her. You're not fighting for a ranch hand. You're fighting for something else. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was fighting for Rowan because saving him felt like saving some part of herself, the part that refused to be broken, that chose defiance over surrender, that believed courage still mattered even when the world had proven otherwise. Or maybe she was just foolish. The days that followed were tense. Rowan worked with his usual intensity, but Lydia caught him watching the road sometimes, alert for threats that hadn't arrived yet. They developed a new language of glances and small gestures, checking in without words. Are you all right? Still here? Still safe? For now? The ranch was coming together. The fences were repaired, the irrigation ditch was flowing properly, the barn roof no longer leaked. Rowan had even managed to gentle Spitfire enough that the stallion would take a saddle, though no one had tried to ride him yet. He's got a gift, Sarah Miller said one afternoon when she stopped by with fresh bread as thanks for saving her niece. With animals, I mean. They trust him. He's patient. It's more than that. Sarah watched Rowan work with the stallion, his movements slow and deliberate. He understands them, the scared ones especially. Maybe because he's scared too. Sarah looked at her sharply. Is he? Wouldn't you be? A stranger in a town that doesn't trust you, working for a woman everyone thinks is crazy, knowing that every day might be the day your past catches up. Is his past that bad? Lydia didn't answer. She'd promised not to share Rowan's story, and she'd keep that promise even with friends. People are talking, Sarah said after a moment, about you and him. Let them talk. They're saying you're too familiar, that you spend too much time alone together, that it's not proper. Since when do I care about proper? Since it could hurt you worse than you're already hurt. Sarah's voice was gentle. I'm not judging, Lydia. I'm warning. Nancy Pratt is spreading rumors. Robert Garrett is watching for ammunition. If they think something inappropriate is happening here, nothing is happening. I know that. You know that. But perception matters. Sarah touched her arm. Be careful. That's all I'm saying. She left, taking her warnings with her. Lydia stood in the yard, realizing for the first time that she and Rowan had created something that looked questionable from the outside. A young woman and a silent man, alone on a failing ranch, working closely day after day. Of course, people were talking. She should care more about that, should be concerned about her reputation, about propriety, about what the town thought. But she found she didn't. She was too tired and too angry and too focused on survival to worry about gossip. That evening, she brought dinner out to the bunkhouse instead of calling Rowan up to the main house. It was a small rebellion, a tiny act of defiance against propriety and expectations. He looked surprised when she appeared with 2 plates, 2 forks, an offering of shared space. "Thought you might want company," she said, "or I might want company. Hard to tell which." He stepped aside, letting her in. They ate in comfortable silence, sitting on opposite bunks, the lamplight throwing long shadows. When she finished, she set down her plate and looked at him directly. "Tell me something true," she said. "Something I don't know." He considered this, then stood, walked to his bag and pulled out a small leather-bound book. He handed it to her. It was a journal. The pages were filled with careful drawings, landscapes, animals, people's faces. They were good, skilled, showing an eye for detail and a talent that must have taken years to develop. "You're an artist," she said, surprised. He nodded, almost embarrassed. "These are beautiful." She turned pages, studying. "Do you still draw?" He made a gesture, sometimes when the memories aren't too loud. "What memories?" His hand moved to his throat again, then to the drawings, before and after, the person he'd been and the person he'd become. "You think you lost this? Your art, your voice, yourself?" "Yes." "But you're still here, still creating, still surviving." She closed the journal carefully. "That takes more strength than most people have." He looked at her like she'd said something in a language he'd forgotten he knew. "Tomorrow I need to take my father to see Dr. Brennan," she continued. "His episodes are getting worse. I'll be gone most of the day. Can you manage the ranch alone?" He nodded. "And if anyone comes looking for trouble?" His expression hardened. He made a gesture, handled, protected, safe. "I believe you." She stood, handing back the journal. "Thank you for sharing this, for trusting me." She left before he could respond, before the intimacy of the moment could stretch into something neither of them could walk back from. But as she crossed the dark yard to the house, she felt his eyes on her back, watching her go, protecting her even at a distance. And she realized, with a jolt of recognition that felt like falling, that somewhere along the way she'd stopped seeing Rowan as just a hired hand. He'd become something else, something important, something dangerous in an entirely different way. The trip to Dr. Brennan's took most of the following day. Her father was agitated in the wagon, confused about where they were going, why Lydia was taking him away from home. The doctor's examination was gentle but thorough, and his prognosis was what she'd feared. "It's progressing," Brennan said quietly, while her father waited in another room. "Faster than I'd hoped. Within 6 months, maybe less, he won't recognize you at all. Within a year." He trailed off. "Will he suffer?" "Not physically, but the confusion will worsen. The fear. He'll need constant care eventually." "I can't afford constant care." "I know." Brennan's face was sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Lydia. I wish I had better news." They drove home in silence, her father dozing against her shoulder. The sun was setting by the time they reached the ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like fire. The yard was empty. Too empty. Something felt wrong. Lydia helped her father inside, got him settled, then went looking for Rowan. He wasn't in the bunkhouse. Wasn't in the barn. She found him finally at the far fence line, standing motionless, staring east. "What's wrong?" she called. He turned, and even in the fading light she could see the tension in his body. He pointed east, made a gesture. Riders, multiple, watching. "Someone's out there?" "Yes." "How many?" He held up 3 fingers. "Did they approach?" "No, just watching, all day." "Harrow's men?" He nodded slowly. "They've found me." Lydia felt ice settle in her stomach. "How long do we have?" Rowan made a gesture. "Tonight, tomorrow, soon, not long." "Then we prepare." She kept her voice level despite the fear. "You said we'd handle it together, so let's handle it." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded, something fierce and determined in his eyes. They walked back to the house side by side, both of them aware that the countdown had begun. Whatever was coming would arrive soon, bringing violence and reckoning with it. And when it did, Lydia thought, they'd face it standing, together, even if it destroyed them both. They spent that night preparing. Rowan moved through the ranch with military precision, checking sight lines, identifying defensive positions, making small adjustments that meant nothing to Lydia, but clearly meant everything to him. He boarded up the lower windows on the house, reinforced the barn doors, positioned tools and equipment in ways that could be used as weapons if needed. Lydia watched him work, her rifle across her lap, trying not to think about what it meant that she might actually have to use it. She'd shot game before, rabbits and the occasional deer when they'd needed meat. But shooting at a person was different. Shooting at someone who wanted to kill the man she'd sworn to protect was something else entirely. Her father was asleep upstairs, mercifully unaware of the danger circling them. That was something, at least. If violence came, maybe he'd sleep through it, wake up after it was over with no memory of the fear. "How many fights have you been in?" she asked Rowan when he came back to the porch. "Real fights. Not sparring or training." He held up his hands, made a gesture that encompassed too many to count easily. "Did you win them all?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Honest, at least." "What happens when you lose?" He touched the scar on his throat, then pointed to other scars she could see, his hands, his forearms, the one that disappeared under his collar. The answer was clear. You survive or you don't. There's no middle ground. "I don't want you to die for this ranch," she said quietly. He looked at her sharply, questioning. "I mean it. If it comes down to a choice between fighting and running, I want you to run. Save yourself." He shook his head emphatically, made a gesture, her father, the ranch, all under his protection. No running. "Why? You don't owe me that much." He stared at her for a long moment, then made a gesture she didn't understand at first, his hand over his heart, then pointing at her. Not romantic, not exactly. Something deeper. Loyalty, maybe. Or recognition. The acknowledgement that she'd given him something when no one else would, and that debt mattered. "You don't owe me anything," she repeated, but her voice was softer now. He made the gesture again, more emphatic. "Yes, I do." They sat in silence after that, watching the dark horizon, waiting for movement that didn't come. The night was cold and clear, stars brilliant overhead, the kind of sky that made you feel small and temporary. Somewhere out there, 3 men were watching, waiting for the right moment to move. Or maybe more than 3 by now. Maybe Harrow himself was coming, bringing whatever force he thought necessary to finish what he'd started. "Tell me about him," Lydia said. "Harrow. What kind of man is he?" Rowan's face darkened. He made a series of gestures: authority, cruelty, pride, ruthlessness. A man who believed the rules didn't apply to him, who saw people as tools or obstacles, nothing in between. "And he's coming here because you defied him." "Yes." "What did he order you to do? That day you refused?" Rowan looked away. His hands moved slowly, reluctantly, painting a picture in broken gestures. A village, civilians, women, children, an order to eliminate everyone. No witnesses, no mercy, no questions. "He wanted you to massacre them." "Yes." "And you said no." Rowan's jaw tightened. He made another gesture, not just no. He'd stopped it, stood between his unit and the village, forced them to stand down, saved lives at the cost of his own future. "So he tried to kill you for it?" "Yes, and made it look like I attacked him. Court-martial, desertion, everything necessary to make me the criminal instead of him." "How many men does he have?" Rowan held up his hands, calculating. 12, maybe more. Well-armed, well-trained, loyal to Harrow either through belief or fear. "We can't fight that many." He nodded. "I know." "Then what do we do?" He made a gesture, strategy, not strength. Smart, not strong. Fighting on terms they chose, not terms dictated by superior numbers. "You've done this before. Been outnumbered." "Yes." "Did you win?" He smiled that brief, scarred smile. "Sometimes." Lydia wanted to ask what happened the times he didn't win, but she already knew. The scars told that story clearly enough. The attack came at dawn. Not the riders from the east, they'd been a distraction, Lydia realized later. The real threat came from the south, 4 men on horseback moving fast and quiet, reaching the ranch yard before anyone could react. Rowan saw them first. He'd been checking the barn, early as always, and he came running across the yard yelling, no, not yelling, he couldn't yell, but making some kind of sound, a raw, harsh noise that was half warning, half fury. Lydia grabbed her rifle and ran to the window. 4 men, all armed, spreading out with military precision. They weren't trying to be subtle. This was intimidation, a show of force meant to demonstrate how outmatched she was. The lead rider stopped in the center of the yard. He was older than the others, maybe 40, with a neat beard and expensive clothes. Everything about him screamed authority, control, the kind of man who was used to being obeyed. "Rowan Cade," he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the morning air. "I know you're here. Come out and we can settle this peacefully." Rowan had reached the porch. He stood beside Lydia, breathing hard, his whole body tense. "That's Harrow?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "What does he want?" Rowan made a gesture. "Me, dead, or captured, either acceptable." "Miss Cross," Harrow called. "I assume that's you in the window. I apologize for the intrusion, but I'm here on military business. The man you've hired is a deserter and a fugitive. I'm here to take him back to face justice." "He's not going anywhere," Lydia shouted back, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "I'm afraid that's not your decision. This is a matter of military law." "Military law doesn't reach onto my property without proper authority." "You got a warrant?" Harrow's smile was cold. "I don't need a warrant for a deserter, but I'm trying to be civilized about this. Send him out and you won't be harmed. You can go back to your failing ranch and your sad life, and we'll forget you were ever involved." "No." "No?" Harrow's voice hardened. "You're choosing to harbor a criminal? To obstruct military justice? Do you understand the consequences of that choice?" "I understand you're trespassing, and I understand I've got a rifle pointed at your chest. So maybe you should be worrying about your own consequences." One of Harrow's men shifted, reaching for his weapon. Rowan moved instantly, stepping in front of Lydia, putting his body between her and the threat. "Stand down," Harrow ordered his man. Then to Lydia, "You're making a mistake, a very serious mistake. This man is dangerous. He's deceived you, manipulated you, used your obvious desperation for his own purposes." "That's not true." "Isn't it? What do you really know about him? What has he told you?" Harrow's voice took on a concerned tone, almost fatherly. "He can't speak, Miss Cross." "Convenient, isn't it? He can't be questioned, can't explain himself, can't be held accountable for anything he claims. He told me enough about what you ordered him to do, about the village, about why he refused." Harrow's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "He told you lies. Fabrications designed to make himself the hero and me the villain. The truth is that Sergeant Cade attacked me when I attempted to discipline him for insubordination. He cut his own throat trying to avoid capture, then fled like the coward he is." "You're lying." "Am I? Look at him, Miss Cross. Really look. Does he look like a man who makes good choices? A man who can be trusted?" Harrow gestured at Rowan. "He's scarred, damaged, broken. He's dangerous. And you're protecting him out of some misguided sense of charity or rebellion or whatever it is that makes a woman throw her life away on a lost cause." Lydia felt Rowan tense beside her. She touched his arm lightly, a silent message. "Stay calm. Don't give him what he wants." "I'm asking you one last time," Harrow continued. "Send him out, or I'll be forced to take him by force, and I promise you won't like what that looks like. And I'm telling you one last time, get off my property." Harrow sighed, a man disappointed by the stubbornness of fools. "Very well, you've made your choice." He turned his horse. "We'll be back, with more men and less patience. And when we are, Miss Cross, you'll wish you'd been smarter today." They rode off, leaving dust and threat hanging in the air. Lydia lowered her rifle, her hands shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. "How long do we have?" Rowan held up one hand. "Hours, not days." "Then we need help." He shook his head, made a gesture. No one would come. Too dangerous. Her fight, not theirs. "Maybe. Or maybe people are tired of men like Harrow deciding what's right by force." She headed for the door. "I'm going to town. You stay here with my father. If they come back before I return—" He grabbed her arm, stopping her. Made an emphatic gesture. "Too dangerous. Stay together. I'll be faster alone." and someone needs to protect my father. She pulled free gently. Trust me. Please. He looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded, reluctant acceptance. If I'm not back by noon, take my father and go. There's a line shack about 10 miles north. Hide there until this is over. He shook his head, not leaving. Rowan, he made the gesture again, the one from last night, his hand over his heart, then pointing at her. Loyalty. Commitment. I stay. You're impossible, she said, but there was no heat in it. His scarred smile flashed briefly. Yes. She took the fastest horse, pushed him hard, and made it to town in under an hour. The streets were quiet, most people still at breakfast or just starting their day. She went straight to Mayor Henderson's house and pounded on the door until his wife answered, looking alarmed. Lydia, what's wrong? I need to see the mayor, now. Henderson appeared behind his wife, pulling his suspenders up. What's happened? Military men came to my ranch this morning, led by a man named Harrow. They're claiming Rowan's a deserter, but they're lying, and they're coming back with more men to take him by force. Henderson's face paled. Military? Lydia, if this is official business, it's not official. It's personal. It's revenge disguised as justice. She stepped forward. I need help. I need men who'll stand with me, who'll show Harrow that he can't just ride into Blackwater Ridge and threaten people. You're asking us to oppose the military. I'm asking you to oppose corruption, to stand up for what's right instead of what's easy. We don't know what's right here. We only have your word and the word of a man who can't speak to defend himself. Then take my word. I'm vouching for him. Your word? Henderson's voice was gentle but firm. Lydia, you've been through hell lately. Your judgment might not be... Don't! She cut him off, fury rising. Don't you dare suggest I'm too emotional or too damaged to know what I'm seeing. I've watched Rowan work. I've seen how he treats people. I know what kind of man he is. And I know what kind of man Harrow is just from how he talks, how he threatens, how he operates. So take my word or don't, but don't pretend this is about my judgment being clouded. Henderson looked at his wife, who shrugged helplessly. What exactly are you asking for? Men, witnesses, enough people that Harrow can't just murder Rowan in my yard and call it justice. And if shooting starts, then shooting starts. But at least it'll be a fair fight instead of an execution. This isn't our fight, Lydia. Yes, it is. It's everyone's fight, because if Harrow can come here and do whatever he wants, where does it stop? Who's next? She looked at him directly. You wanted proof that Rowan's worth standing up for. He's saved a child's life. He's worked harder than any 3 men I've ever hired. He's earned my loyalty. The question is whether this town has any loyalty worth earning. Henderson was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. I'll see who I can gather. No promises, but I'll try. Thank you. She left before he could change his mind, before doubt could creep in. She stopped at the Miller Ranch next, found Sarah's brothers in the barn. I need help, she said without preamble, and told them everything. The older brother, James, looked skeptical. You're asking us to go up against military? I'm asking you to stand with me against men who think might makes right. Rowan saved our niece, the younger brother, William, said quietly. We owe him. We don't owe him enough to die for him. Maybe not, but we owe Lydia enough to at least show up. Make it harder for Harrow to do whatever he's planning. James looked between his brother and Lydia, clearly torn. Finally, he nodded. We'll come. But if this goes bad, I know. I'm not asking you to fight, just to stand. That might be enough. She made 2 more stops, gathering what support she could, before riding back to the ranch. It was nearly noon when she arrived, her horse lathered and exhausted. The yard was empty, but she could see Rowan on the porch, rifle across his lap, watching. He came down to meet her as she dismounted, questioning. Henderson's gathering people. The Miller brothers are coming, a few others. She looked at him. It might not be enough. He made a gesture, never enough against Harrow, but grateful anyway. They're not here yet. Your reinforcements or his. She glanced at the sun. We probably have an hour, maybe 2. He nodded, made a gesture, prepare, position, plan. They spent the next hour turning the ranch into something defensible. Rowan positioned heavy equipment to create barriers, designated firing positions, explained through gesture and drawing in the dirt what he expected to happen and how they should respond. Lydia followed his lead, trusting his experience even as fear gnawed at her gut. Her father appeared on the porch, confused by the activity. "What's all this?" "Just some work that needs doing, Papa. Go back inside." "Is there trouble?" "Nothing I can't handle." He looked at her with unusual clarity. "You're lying. You're scared." She didn't have time to coddle him. "Yes, I'm scared, but I'm doing it anyway. Now go inside and lock your door, please." He studied her face, then nodded slowly. For once, he didn't argue. By 1 o'clock, Henderson arrived with 6 men. Not many, but more than nothing. The Miller brothers came separately, bringing their rifles in grim determination. A few others trickled in. Ranch hands, neighbors, people who'd decided that watching Lydia stand alone was worse than standing with her. "This is everyone I could get," Henderson said. "Most people are too frightened or too smart. This is enough." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We might be about to make everything worse." They spread out across the property, making themselves visible. A show of numbers, of community support. Rowan moved among them, positioning people, giving silent instructions that Henderson translated for those who didn't understand his gestures. "He knows what he's doing," one of the ranch hands muttered. "Whoever taught him, they taught him right." "Question is whether it'll be enough," another replied. At 2 o'clock, the dust cloud appeared on the eastern horizon. Not 4 riders this time. Lydia counted 12, maybe 15 men, all armed, moving in formation that spoke of training and discipline. "Hell," Henderson breathed. "That's not a posse. That's a company." Rowan appeared beside Lydia, his face grim. He made a gesture, worse than expected. Much worse. "Can we win this?" He shook his head slightly. "But we can make it cost them." The riders stopped at the edge of the property, just out of rifle range. Harrow was at the front, sitting his horse with casual confidence. He surveyed the gathered defenders, and Lydia saw his expression shift from irritation to something closer to amusement. "Miss Cross," he called, "you've been busy." "So have you." "I brought sufficient force to ensure there's no misunderstanding about how this ends." He gestured at his men. "These are professional soldiers, trained, experienced, loyal. The people you've gathered are farmers and ranch hands, civilians playing at war. This ends badly for them if you force me to use them." "Then don't force anything. Just leave." "I can't do that. I have a duty to apprehend a deserter and traitor." Harrow's voice carried across the space between them. "But I'm willing to make this simple. Send out Rowan Cade and everyone else walks away. You, your father, all these fools you've convinced to die for you, all safe, all free. I give you my word as an officer. Your word's worthless." "Is it?" "Ask Cade. He knows what my word means. He knows what happens to those who betray me." Harrow's smile was cold. "Last chance, Miss Cross. Be smart for once in your life." Lydia looked at Rowan. He was staring at Harrow with an expression of pure hatred, his hands clenched into fists. She touched his arm gently. "Your choice," she said quietly. "I'll stand with you either way." He looked at her, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Then he stepped forward, away from cover, standing in full view of Harrow and his men. He made a gesture, himself, surrendering, trading his life for theirs. "No," Lydia said, grabbing his arm. "That's not the deal." He made the gesture again, more emphatic. "This protects you. This ends it. This ends with you dead." He nodded. "I know, but you live." "Rowan," he pulled free gently, started walking toward Harrow, each step deliberate, final. Lydia raised her rifle without thinking, aimed at Harrow. "You take another step and I shoot him." Everyone froze. Harrow's smile widened. "You'd start a war over this?" "I'd start a war over him, yes." "Why? What is he to you?" Harrow's voice was curious now, probing. "You're not lovers. He's too damaged for that. Not friends. You barely know him. So what is it? Why are you willing to die for a man who's nothing to you?" "He's not nothing." "Then what is he?" Lydia didn't lower the rifle. He's someone who chose right over easy, who saved lives when ordered to take them, who's worked himself to exhaustion fixing my ranch because he gave his word. He's worth 10 of you. He's a deserter and a coward. He's a man who stood up to you. That's what really bothers you, isn't it? That he said no. That he made you look weak. This isn't about justice. It's about your pride. Something flickered across Harrow's face. You know nothing about me or what happened. I know enough. I know you ordered him to kill civilians, to massacre women and children, and when he refused, you tried to murder him for it. That's a lie. Is it? Then explain why he can't speak. Explain the scar across his throat. Explain why a decorated sergeant with years of honorable service would suddenly turn traitor. She kept the rifle steady. You can't, can you? Because the truth makes you the villain. Harrow's expression hardened. You're making a very serious accusation. I'm stating facts. Facts according to a mute who can't defend his story, who can't be cross-examined or questioned. Harrow leaned forward in his saddle. For all you know, he cut his own throat in a moment of cowardice, or another soldier did it for crimes you don't know about. You're trusting someone who literally cannot tell you the truth. He's shown me the truth, through his actions, through how he works, how he treats people. I don't need words when I can see character. Then you're a fool. Harrow straightened. I'm done negotiating. Cade, if you walk out here now, I'll make it quick. You have my word. But if you make me come get you, I promise you'll beg for death before I grant it. Rowan had stopped midway between the porch and Harrow's position. He stood there, caught between two impossible choices, surrender and die quick, or fight and watch everyone around him die instead. Then, from behind Harrow's line, a new voice called out, Captain Harrow, stand down! Everyone turned. 3 riders were approaching from the west, moving fast. The lead rider wore a uniform with markings Lydia didn't recognize, but clearly meant something to Harrow, whose face had gone pale. Colonel Morrison, Harrow said, his voice tight. This is unexpected. The colonel, an older man, gray-haired and weathered, rode forward until he was between the two groups. I received some interesting telegrams over the past week, inquiries about one of my former sergeants, allegations of desertion, court-martial proceedings I somehow wasn't informed about. He looked at Harrow coldly. Want to explain that, Captain? This is a routine apprehension of a fugitive, sir. Nothing that required your attention. Routine. Morrison's voice was flat. You brought 15 armed men to apprehend one unarmed fugitive on civilian property. That's routine? The situation required nothing except your pride being salved. Morrison dismounted, walked over to where Rowan stood frozen. Sergeant Cade, it's been a while. Rowan saluted slowly, formally, a gesture of respect and recognition. I've been doing some research, Morrison continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. Talking to men who served with you, getting their version of events from that day in Arizona. He turned to face Harrow. Want to know what they told me, Captain? Harrow said nothing. They said you ordered an assault on a civilian village, that when Sergeant Cade questioned the legality of that order, you threatened him with court-martial, that when he physically prevented the massacre, you attacked him with a knife and left him for dead, that you then falsified reports, claimed he'd assaulted you, and initiated a manhunt to eliminate the only witness to your war crimes. The gathered defenders were muttering now, shocked. Even Henderson looked stunned. That's a lie, Harrow said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Because I've got sworn statements from 6 soldiers, including your own second-in-command, who apparently couldn't live with his conscience anymore. Morrison pulled a folded document from his coat. This is a warrant for your arrest, Captain. Charges include attempted murder, conduct unbecoming an officer, falsification of military records, and conspiracy to commit war crimes. Harrow's hand moved toward his weapon. Instantly, Morrison's 2 escorts drew their own sidearms, aimed and ready. Don't, Morrison said quietly. You've destroyed your career. Don't destroy your life, too. For a moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Harrow looked around at his men, calculating odds, measuring loyalty. Most of them were already backing away, unwilling to die for a cause that had just been exposed as rotten. This isn't over, Harrow said finally, his voice cold with fury. Yes, it is, Morrison gestured to his escorts. Take him into custody. They moved forward. Harrow's men parted, letting them through. No one was willing to fight now, not with the truth exposed, not with a colonel giving orders. As Harrow was disarmed and bound, Morrison walked over to Lydia. You must be Miss Cross, the woman who sent those telegrams to half the army trying to find information about Sergeant Cade. That was Robert Garrett, actually. He was trying to get Rowan arrested. Instead, he led me straight to a war criminal I've been searching for. Morrison smiled slightly. Sometimes stupidity serves justice better than intelligence. Is Rowan free? He's free. The court-martial was fraudulent, the charges fabricated. As far as the Army is concerned, he served honorably and is entitled to all benefits and recognition of that service. Morrison raised his voice. Sergeant Cade, you're cleared of all charges. Your record is restored. You're free to go wherever you choose. Rowan stood there, seemingly unable to process what had just happened. His enemy was in chains. His name was clear. He was free. Lydia walked over to him, touched his arm. You hear that? It's over. You won. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw tears in his eyes. Not crying exactly, but close. Relief or shock, or the weight of years of running finally lifted. Morrison approached them. I want to apologize, Sergeant, for not finding you sooner, for letting you suffer when you'd done nothing but the right thing. Rowan nodded slowly, acceptance without absolution. If you're willing, I'd like you to testify at Harrow's trial. Tell your side of the story. Make sure he answers for what he did. Rowan made a gesture at his throat. Can't speak. You can write it down, or use someone to translate, whatever works. Morrison paused. But I understand if you'd rather just walk away. You've earned that right. Rowan looked at Lydia, questioning. Your choice, she said, but I think you should do it. Make sure everyone knows the truth. He considered this, then nodded at Morrison. Agreement. Good man. Morrison turned to address the gathered crowd. I apologize for bringing this trouble to your community. Captain Harrow will face military justice. Those of you who stood here today, thank you. It takes courage to oppose authority, even corrupt authority. You should be proud. Henderson stepped forward. What about the men Harrow brought? Are they in trouble? No. They were following orders from a superior officer. They're not responsible for his crimes. Morrison gestured to Harrow's former company. You're all dismissed. Return to your posts and await further orders. The soldiers dispersed quickly, clearly relieved to escape the situation. Morrison's escorts loaded Harrow into a wagon, the former captain silent now, his face a mask of impotent rage. As they prepared to leave, Morrison pulled Rowan aside for a private conversation. Lydia couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Rowan's expression shift through several emotions: surprise, refusal, consideration, finally reluctant acceptance. When Morrison left, taking Harrow and the immediate threat with him, the defenders began to disperse as well. Henderson approached Lydia, shaking his head. I don't know whether you're the bravest or the stupidest woman I've ever met. Can't I be both? Apparently. He smiled tiredly. You were right. About Rowan. About standing up. I'm sorry I doubted. You came when I asked. That's what matters. The Miller brothers stopped to say goodbye, promising to spread word of what had really happened. Sarah hugged Lydia tightly. You're either crazy or amazing, she whispered. Possibly both. That seems to be the consensus. Within an hour, the ranch was quiet again. Just Lydia and Rowan standing in the yard where they'd expected to die, alive against all odds. So, Lydia said finally, you're free. You can go anywhere. Do anything. What now? Rowan made a gesture. The ranch? Her? A question. Stay? You want to stay? He nodded. Why? You don't have to hide anymore. You could rejoin the army, go anywhere, start over properly. He made a series of gestures. Contract, promise, 3 months, not finished. We still have 6 weeks on our deal. Yes. And after? He made another gesture, slower. Her, the ranch, him. Together. If she wanted. Lydia felt something shift in her chest. You want to stay. After the contract ends, work here, live here. He nodded, then added another gesture. Build something. Future. With her. As what? A hired hand? He shook his head. Made a gesture. Partner. Equal. Together. You're asking if you can stay. As my partner. Yes. She should say no. Should protect herself from more heartbreak, more risk, more vulnerability. Should be smart and careful and safe. Yes, she said instead. You can stay. His scarred smile broke across his face, genuine and bright and transforming. He stepped forward like he might embrace her, then stopped, uncertain. She closed the distance, hugged him hard. He froze for a moment, then his arms came around her, careful but firm. They stood there in the dusty yard, two broken people who'd found something worth fighting for in each other. When they finally pulled apart, Lydia was smiling despite the tears on her face. We should check on my father. He's probably terrified. They found him in his room, sitting in his chair, staring out the window. He looked up when they entered. Is it over? He asked. The fighting? It's over, Papa. We're safe. Good. He smiled vaguely. Your mother will be glad. She worries when there's violence. Lydia didn't correct him, just kissed his forehead and left him to his memories. That night, she and Rowan sat on the porch in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. The crisis had passed. The threat was gone. They'd won, impossibly. But winning, Lydia was learning, was just the beginning. Now came the harder part, figuring out what they were building together and whether it could survive everything still ahead. The morning after Harrow's arrest, Lydia woke to find Rowan already at work repairing the barriers they'd built, dismantling the makeshift fortifications that had turned her ranch into something resembling a battlefield. She watched him from the kitchen window while making coffee, studying the efficiency of his movements, the way he worked even now without slowing down or taking breaks he didn't need. She brought him coffee without asking if he wanted it. He took it with a nod of thanks, drank it standing up, then went back to pulling boards off the windows. Always moving, always useful. Like stopping meant giving space for thoughts he didn't want. You don't have to fix everything in one day, she called out. He glanced at her, made a gesture, habit, need, can't help it. I know the feeling. By noon, the ranch looked almost normal again. The defensive positions were gone, the equipment back where it belonged, the visible evidence of yesterday's standoff erased. But the memory remained, hanging over everything like smoke that wouldn't clear. Nancy Pratt arrived around 1 o'clock, driving her buggy up the lane with practiced precision. She climbed down without waiting for invitation, her face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't reach her eyes. Lydia, I had to come see if you were all right. The whole town is talking about what happened yesterday. I'm fine. Are you? Armed soldiers, a standoff, your hired man being revealed as a fugitive. It must have been terrifying. Nancy looked around the yard as if searching for evidence of trauma. Though I suppose it's over now. He'll be leaving, won't he? Going back to the army or wherever cleared soldiers go? He's staying. Nancy's smile froze. Staying? But surely after all this trouble, after nearly getting you killed, after proving he was innocent and standing against corruption. Yes, he's staying. We have a contract. A contract, Nancy's voice sharpened. Lydia, be reasonable. Everyone knows what almost happened here. Your reputation is already damaged from the wedding, and now you're keeping a man on your property who brought military violence to our community. People are concerned. People should mind their own business. It becomes our business when your choices affect the whole town. What if those soldiers had started shooting? What if innocent people had been killed because you stubbornly insisted on protecting a man you barely know? I know him well enough. Do you? Nancy stepped closer, her voice dropping to something like intimacy. Or do you just know what you want to see? A damaged man who makes you feel noble for fixing him? A cause you can fight for because it's easier than facing your own failures? The words hit harder than they should have. Lydia felt her hands clench into fists at her sides. My failures? The ranch falling apart. Your father's illness. Thomas leaving you at the altar because you were too much work, too much trouble, too much everything. Nancy's smile was poisonous. You're not saving Rowan, Lydia. You're using him to avoid dealing with your own life. Get off my property. I'm trying to help you. Someone needs to tell you the truth before you destroy what little you have left. Nancy moved toward her buggy. Robert Garrett is still willing to marry you, despite everything. He sees potential in this land even if you're determined to waste it. You should think about that, about whether your pride is worth losing everything for. She drove off, leaving Lydia shaking with rage and something worse, the creeping suspicion that maybe Nancy was partially right. Maybe she was using Rowan, using the drama and the crisis to avoid facing the slow, inevitable decay of everything else in her life. Rowan appeared beside her, questioning. He'd seen Nancy leave, read the tension in Lydia's shoulders. She said, "I'm using you, that I'm keeping you here because it makes me feel better about my own failures." He made a gesture, her choice, her reasons, not Nancy's business. But what if she's right? What if I'm not protecting you? I'm just using you to feel like I'm in control of something. Rowan looked at her seriously. Then he made a careful series of gestures. He pointed at himself, then made the motion for work, for building, for fixing. Then pointed at her, made a gesture for giving, payment, yes, but also trust, shelter, belief. He pointed at both of them together, made a gesture that encompassed partnership, equality, choice. "You're saying we're using each other, that it's mutual." He nodded, then added another gesture, and that's fine. That's how it works. People need each other. "When did you get so wise?" His scarred smile flashed, learned the hard way. That afternoon, Robert Garrett arrived. Unlike Nancy, he didn't bother with the pretense of concern. He rode up to the porch where Lydia was sitting, dismounted with casual authority, and stood there looking at her like she was a problem he was tired of solving. "I heard about yesterday," he said without preamble. "Quite a show you put on." "It wasn't a show." "Wasn't it? The defiant woman standing up to corrupt authority, the wronged soldier vindicated, the dramatic confrontation. Very theatrical." He crossed his arms. "And now you're a hero in the town's eyes. The woman who was brave enough to stand when no one else would." "I didn't do it for recognition." "No, you did it for him, the silent drifter who somehow became worth risking everything for." Garrett's voice was cold. "I underestimated you, Lydia. I thought you were desperate and alone and would eventually see reason. I didn't realize you were genuinely crazy." "If standing up for what's right is crazy, then I'll take it." "What's right?" He laughed, bitter. "You know what's right? Paying your debts, taking care of your father, accepting help when it's offered. Those are the right things, Lydia. Instead, you're clinging to this failing ranch and this damaged man like they're life rafts when they're really anchors dragging you down. The ranch isn't failing anymore. Rowan's fixed most of what was broken. For now. But what happens when the next crisis comes? When your father needs more care than you can provide? When the bank finally forecloses because heroic stands don't pay mortgage notes?" He stepped closer. "I'm withdrawing my offer. I'm done trying to save you from yourself. But I want you to remember this conversation when everything falls apart. Remember that you chose this. You chose pride over practicality, romance over reality. There's nothing romantic happening here, isn't there?" His eyes were sharp. "You look at him like he's already yours, like the contract and the wages are just formalities covering something else. Maybe you don't see it yet, but everyone else does." "You're wrong." "Am I? Then prove it. Send him away. Show everyone that this was about principle, not attachment. Show them you're not just a lonely woman clinging to the first man who showed her basic decency." Lydia stood up, meeting his gaze directly. "I don't have to prove anything to you or anyone else. Rowan stays. My reasons are my own. And you need to leave before I lose what's left of my patience." Garrett studied her for a long moment. "You're going to regret this. Not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, when reality catches up to your fantasies, you're going to wish you'd been smarter." He mounted his horse and rode off without looking back. Lydia stood on the porch, watching him go, wondering if he was right. If she was building her life on fantasies and stubbornness rather than anything solid. Rowan came around the corner of the house, carrying fence posts. He saw her face and set them down, walking over with concern in his eyes. "Garrett thinks I'm making a mistake keeping you here. Nancy thinks I'm using you to avoid my problems. Henderson thinks I'm reckless." She looked at him. "Are they right?" He made a gesture. "Does it matter what they think?" "It matters if they're seeing something I'm not, if I'm being stupid and calling it brave." Rowan shook his head, made a series of gestures. Her ranch, her choice, her life. They don't live it, don't work it, don't know what she needs. Only she knows that. What if I don't know? What if I'm just guessing and hoping? He made another gesture, slower. Everyone guesses. No one knows. That's life. Despite everything, she smiled. You're surprisingly philosophical for someone who can't talk. He tapped his head. Lots of time to think. The bank letter arrived 3 days later. Lydia opened it with hands that wanted to shake. Read the formal language that boiled down to a simple message. Pay the full amount owed within 30 days or face foreclosure. $217. Due by month's end. She had $43 and change. Rowan's wages had eaten most of her remaining cash. She'd been so focused on surviving the immediate crisis with Harrow that she'd let the slower crisis of debt fade into the background. Now it was front and center, unavoidable. She sat at the kitchen table with the letter, staring at numbers that didn't add up no matter how she arranged them. Selling cattle might get her halfway there, but she needed the cattle. Selling equipment would cripple the ranch's ability to function. Selling land would mean losing the one thing she'd been fighting to keep. Rowan found her there an hour later, the letter still in her hand. He read over her shoulder, his expression darkening as he understood. I don't know what to do, she said quietly. I've been so focused on keeping you safe, keeping the ranch running, that I forgot the bank doesn't care about any of that. They just want their money. He made a gesture. How much? $217. I have 43. He thought for a moment, then made a gesture. His wages, give back, use for payment. No, you earned that money. I'm not taking it back. He gestured more emphatically. Doesn't matter. Ranch matters more. Take it. It's not enough anyway. Even with your wages, I'm still short by over $100. Rowan looked at the letter again, his jaw tight with frustration. The same frustration she felt. Being good at fixing physical things, but helpless against paper and numbers and institutional power. I could ask Henderson for a loan, Lydia said without conviction. Or sell Dancer. She'd bring $60, maybe $70. That plus your wages would get me close. Rowan shook his head sharply. Made a gesture. The horse was her mother's. Can't sell. Wrong. Wrong doesn't matter if I lose everything anyway. He grabbed a piece of paper, scrawled something with a pencil. His handwriting was rough but legible. There's another way. What way? He wrote again. Reward money. From Harrow. What reward money? More writing. Colonel Morrison said there was a bounty for information leading to Harrow's arrest. $500. Should be mine. You're entitled to reward money for your own arrest? He nodded. Wrote, for information about war crimes. I gave the information. Should qualify. That could take weeks to process. Months even. He wrote, or Morrison could expedite it. Military can move fast when it wants to. You'd give me the reward money? All of it? He looked at her like she was being deliberately dense. Wrote, it's your ranch. You fought for me. Fair trade. Rowan, that's your money. You could use it to start over, buy your own place, build something for yourself. His expression was firm. He wrote, I want to build something here, with you. Can't do that if the bank takes it. Lydia felt something catch in her throat. You're sure? He nodded. Absolutely sure. How do we contact Morrison? I'll send a telegram. She stood up, feeling hope rekindling despite her best efforts to stay realistic. But even if he agrees, there's no guarantee it'll come through in time. He made a gesture, try anyway, better than giving up. They rode into town together, Lydia on Dancer and Rowan on Buck. People stared as they passed, whispers following them down the street. The woman who'd stood down the army and the silent soldier she'd protected. They were a story now, a piece of local legend, and legends made people uncomfortable. The telegraph office was quiet. Lydia composed the message carefully, explaining the situation and asking if the reward money could be processed quickly. The operator read it over, raised his eyebrows. You're asking a colonel to expedite $500 for a man who was almost court-martialed? That's bold. He was cleared, and he earned that money by exposing corruption. If you say so. The operator sent the telegram, charging her $2 she couldn't afford. Might get a response today, might be a week. Military telegrams are unpredictable. They waited in town, sitting outside the general store, watching the afternoon drift past. Sarah Miller spotted them and came over, her face bright with curiosity. "I heard about the bank letter. Nancy's been telling everyone you're going to lose the ranch." "Nancy needs a hobby." "She has one. It's called ruining your life." Sarah sat down beside them. "Is it true? Are you going to lose it?" "Not if I can help it." "Can I help?" "James and William have some money saved. It's not much, but—" "No, thank you, but no. I'm not taking charity." "It's not charity. It's neighbors helping neighbors. It's charity if I can't pay it back, and I can't promise that." Lydia looked at her seriously. "I appreciate the offer, really, but I need to solve this myself." Sarah glanced at Rowan. "You're not alone anymore, you know. You don't have to solve everything yourself." "I know. Rowan's already helping more than I deserve." "That's not what I meant. I meant the whole town. Yesterday, people stood with you. They saw what you were fighting for and they showed up. That means something. That means you're not as alone as you think you are." It was a nice thought, but nice thoughts didn't pay banknotes. The telegram response came 3 hours later. The operator found them still waiting outside the general store and handed over the message with barely concealed curiosity. Lydia opened it, read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. "Well?" Sarah asked. "Morrison's authorizing immediate payment of the reward, says it'll be wired to the bank here within 3 days. He's also—" She paused, rereading the second part. "He's offering Rowan a position, training post at Fort Douglas. Good pay, full benefits, pension credit for his previous service." She looked at Rowan. He was staring at the telegram like it was written in a foreign language. "That's amazing," Sarah said. "That's everything you need. The money saves the ranch, and Rowan gets a real career instead of ranch hand wages." "Yeah," Lydia said, but her voice was hollow. "Amazing." They rode back to the ranch in silence. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and red, beautiful in a way that felt cruel. Lydia's mind was spinning through calculations and implications, and the slow, sick realization that she was about to lose Rowan after all, just not in the way she'd feared. At the ranch, she dismounted and stood holding Dancer's reins, not ready to face what came next. Rowan touched her shoulder, questioning. "You should take it," she said without looking at him. "Morrison's offer. It's a real future. Security, recognition, everything you deserve." He made a gesture. "What about the ranch?" "The reward money saves the ranch. You don't have to stay to make sure it survives." He made another gesture, more emphatic. "What about our agreement? Partners? That was before you had better options." She finally looked at him. "I can't ask you to stay here for 25 cents a day when you could have a career. That's not fair to you." His face hardened. He grabbed the telegram from her hand, tore it in half, threw the pieces on the ground. "What are you doing?" He made a series of angry gestures, contract, promise, choice already made. She didn't get to decide for him. "Rowan, be reasonable." He gestured more emphatically. He was being reasonable. She was the one trying to push him away. "Why?" "Because you deserve better than this. Better than a failing ranch and a woman who can barely keep her head above water and a future that's uncertain at best." He stepped closer, made her look at him, then gestured slowly, deliberately. He pointed at the ranch, at her, at himself. This is what he wanted. Here, with her, building something together. Why? The question came out raw. Why would you choose this over stability and respect and everything you've been denied? He pulled out the small notebook he kept in his pocket, wrote quickly, handed it to her. "Because here I'm not Sergeant Cade or the damaged soldier or the man who can't speak. Here I'm just Rowan. And that's enough." Lydia read it twice, feeling tears threatening. "It's not enough. You're worth more than just enough." He wrote again. "So are you, but you don't believe it. You think you have to earn the right to be helped, to be cared about, to matter. You're wrong. I stood in a church in front of everyone and wasn't worth staying for. That's not wrong. That's fact." His handwriting got rougher, faster. "Thomas was a coward who didn't deserve you. That's fact. You're brave and stubborn and frustrating, and you care too much about everything. That's also fact. I'm staying because I want to, not because you need me to. Understand?" She couldn't speak around the tightness in her throat, just nodded. He wrote one more line. Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. I get enough of that from everyone else. I'm sorry. He touched her face gently, a gesture that was careful and deliberate and somehow said more than words could. Then he picked up the torn telegram pieces, handed them back to her. She looked at them, at him, at the ranch around them turning dark as night fell. So we turned down Morrison's offer. He nodded. And we take the reward money to pay off the bank. Another nod. And you stay here, as my partner. He smiled, that scarred transformation of his face. Yes. You're sure? Last chance to change your mind. He made a gesture that was unmistakably obscene, making her laugh despite everything. All right then. Partners. They shook on it formally, sealing the deal the way they'd started, with a handshake and a promise and no clear idea of what they were really building. The reward money arrived 2 days later. Lydia went to the bank with the wire transfer authorization, watched the clerk's face shift from condescension to shock as he verified the amount. This pays off your entire note, he said, sounding almost disappointed. Plus interest and fees. I know. And leaves you with almost $300 remaining. I can do math. He processed the payment with visible reluctance, stamping documents with unnecessary force. When he handed her the receipt, she felt something shift in her chest. The weight of that debt, the threat of foreclosure, the fear that had been constant for months, gone. Just gone. She walked out of the bank with her head high, aware of eyes watching, whispers starting. Nancy Pratt was across the street, her face pinched with what looked like genuine pain at seeing Lydia succeed. Robert Garrett was standing outside the land office, watching the scene with expressionless eyes. When Lydia met his gaze, he nodded once. Acknowledgement, maybe, or acceptance that she'd won this round. She rode home fast, eager to tell Rowan. She found him in the barn with Spitfire, working with the stallion who'd finally gentled enough to take a rider. The horse was nervous but trusting, responding to Rowan's patient handling in ways Lydia had never managed. It's done, she called out. The bank's paid off. We're clear. Rowan looked up, his expression shifting into something like relief. He tied off Spitfire's lead and walked over. We have almost $300 left, enough to hire another hand if we need one, enough to fix the irrigation system properly, enough to actually build something sustainable. She was grinning now, unable to help it. We did it. We actually did it. He pulled her into a hug, lifting her off her feet, spinning her around once before setting her down. His silent laugh was just breath and movement, but she felt it anyway. Thank you, she said when he released her. For the money, for staying, for everything. He made a gesture, no thanks needed, then pointed at her, at himself, at the ranch. This is ours now. All of it. Ours, she repeated, testing the word. It felt foreign and right at the same time. That night, her father had one of his clear moments. They were eating dinner together, Rowan joining them at the table for the first time, when the old man looked between them with sudden, sharp awareness. You're going to marry him, he said to Lydia. She nearly choked on her water. What? No, he's my business partner, that's all. Her father smiled, the expression knowing in a way that made her uncomfortable. You look at him the way your mother looked at me, and he looks at you like you're the only solid thing in a world that keeps shifting. Papa, I'm dying, Lydia, slowly but certainly. My mind is going piece by piece. I don't know how much time I have left where I'll recognize you, know who you are, remember what we had. He reached across the table, took her hand. I want to see you settled before I'm gone. I want to know you won't be alone. I'm not going to rush into marriage just to make you feel better. I'm not asking you to rush. I'm asking you to stop fighting what's obvious. He looked at Rowan. You'll take care of her? After I'm gone? Rowan nodded seriously, a promise made and meant. Good. That's all I needed to know. The moment passed. Her father's clarity faded back into confusion, and soon he was asking about people long dead and events that never happened. But the conversation hung in the air, impossible to ignore. After they'd gotten her father to bed, Lydia and Rowan sat on the porch, the now familiar ritual of shared silence. He's not entirely wrong, she said finally, about how we look at each other. Rowan turned to her, questioning. I don't know what this is, what we are. It started as a business arrangement, and it's become... She trailed off, searching for words. Something else. Something I didn't plan for and don't know how to navigate. He pulled out his notebook, wrote carefully. Does it need a name right now? I don't know. Maybe not. She looked at him. But I need to know if you feel it too. This thing that's more than partnership, but less than... I don't even know what. He wrote, I feel it. Don't know what to call it either, but it's real. Yeah, it's real. They sat with that acknowledgement, both of them aware they'd crossed some invisible line, but neither sure what lay on the other side of it. My father thinks we should get married, Lydia said, half joking. Rowan's pen moved across paper. He's not wrong that it would make sense. Legally, financially, partners who marry have protections, rights. That's the most unromantic proposal I've ever heard. Good thing it's not a proposal then. He showed her the next line. Just an observation. An observation that marriage would be practical. Yes. Nothing about love or commitment or any of that. He wrote, Love is a luxury. Commitment we already have. What we need is legal protection for what we're building. She should have been offended, should have felt something about the clinical way he was discussing marriage. Instead, she felt oddly relieved. No pressure, no expectations, just pragmatism. So if we did this, married for practical reasons, what would that look like? Same as now, but with legal benefits. Partnership with paperwork. That's terrible. But honest. He wrote, I can't give you romance, Lydia. Can't speak vows or say pretty words. Can barely promise I won't wake up screaming from nightmares some nights. But I can work. I can build. I can stand beside you and face whatever comes. If that's enough, then maybe we could make it work. She read it over several times, feeling something shift in her understanding of what marriage could be. Not the fairy tale she'd once imagined, not the practical arrangement Thomas had offered. Something in between. Honest partnership built on respect and shared purpose, rather than passion or convenience. Can I think about it? He nodded, no pressure, no rush. But the question was out there now, hanging between them like possibility. Lydia didn't give Rowan an answer right away. The question sat between them like a seed planted in uncertain soil. It might grow into something or it might not, and rushing it wouldn't help either way. They fell back into the rhythm of work, the daily routine of keeping the ranch running, and if there was a new awareness between them, a carefulness in how they moved around each other, neither acknowledged it out loud. 3 weeks after paying off the bank, Thomas Mackenzie returned to Blackwater Ridge. Lydia heard about it from Sarah, who rode out to the ranch with the news and an expression that suggested she expected explosions. He showed up yesterday, Sarah said, dismounting in the yard. Staying at the hotel. He's been asking about you. What does he want? To apologize, apparently. To explain. Nancy says he looks terrible, thinner, haunted, like whatever he's been doing these past months ate him alive. Good. Lydia? I mean it. He left me standing in a church in front of everyone. He gets to feel bad about that. She was mucking out stalls, working with more force than necessary. I don't owe him forgiveness or understanding or anything else. I'm not saying you do. I'm just warning you that he's here and he's going to try to talk to you. Sarah paused. Robert Garrett's been meeting with him. Long conversations at the hotel. I don't know what they're discussing, but it's not friendly. That got Lydia's attention. Garrett and Thomas. Why? No idea, but it's got people talking. Sarah glanced around the yard. Where's Rowan? North pasture, checking the cattle. Are you two? Sarah made a vague gesture that encompassed everything and nothing. Partners. That's all. That's not what it looks like. Then people need better eyes. Lydia set down the pitchfork. We work together. We're rebuilding this ranch together. Anything else is speculation. Speculation that your father actively encourages. He told Mrs. Chen last week that he's planning to dance at your wedding. My father thinks my mother is still alive and that it's 1881. His wedding plans aren't exactly reliable. Sarah smiled despite herself. Fair point. But Lydia, if something is happening between you and Rowan, you should know people are watching, judging. You've already given them so much to talk about. Let them talk. I'm tired of living for an audience. I know. I just don't want to see you hurt again. After Sarah left, Lydia stood in the barn, thinking about Thomas and what his return might mean. She'd spent months building walls around the humiliation of that day, the shame of being left, the anger at being considered disposable. She didn't want to tear those walls down to let him explain or apologize or whatever he thought would make things right. But she also knew avoiding him would make her look weak, afraid. And she was done looking weak. Thomas came to the ranch that evening, driving a rented buggy, looking exactly as Sarah had described, thinner, older somehow, worn down by whatever had chased him away and then brought him back. Lydia watched him from the porch, not moving to greet him. He climbed down slowly, stood in the yard with his hat in his hands. Lydia, thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided if I'm seeing you. State your business. I came to apologize, to explain why I left. You deserved better than what I did. Yes, I did. Can we talk, please, just for a few minutes? Lydia considered sending him away, but curiosity won out over pride. You've got 5 minutes. Talk. Thomas walked closer, stopped at the base of the porch steps. I panicked. That morning of the wedding, I woke up and realized I was about to commit to something I wasn't ready for. Not the marriage itself. I cared about you, I did. But the responsibility, your father's illness, the ranch failing, all the debt. I looked at the rest of my life and saw nothing but struggle and sacrifice, and I couldn't do it. So you ran. I ran, like a coward. He looked down at his hat, turning it in his hands. I told myself I was doing you a favor, that you deserve someone stronger, more capable. But really, I was just scared. Where did you go? Sacramento. Worked for my uncle's shipping company. Good pay, easy life. Everything I thought I wanted. His laugh was bitter. Turns out what I wanted and what I needed were different things. I was miserable, Lydia. Every day I thought about what I'd done, how I'd hurt you, and it ate at me. Good. I deserve that. I deserve worse. He finally looked up at her. I'm here to make it right, to ask if you'll give me another chance. Let me help with the ranch, be the partner I should have been from the start. I've got money saved now, enough to invest in improvements, hire help. We could still make this work. We could still... No. Thomas blinked. No? No. We're done, Thomas. We were done the moment you left me at that altar. Lydia kept her voice level. You don't get to come back months later with money and apologies and expect me to take you back like nothing happened. I'm not expecting it to be easy. I know I have to earn back your trust, but Lydia, we were good together. We made sense. With my resources and your land, we could build something real. I already am building something real, without you. With him, you mean? Thomas's voice hardened slightly. The hired man, the one everyone's talking about, is that who you've replaced me with? I haven't replaced you with anyone. I've moved on. There's a difference. Have you? Because from what I hear, you're playing house with a mute soldier who brought military violence to your doorstep. That's not moving on. That's rebounding badly. My relationship with Rowan is none of your business. Relationship. Thomas seized on the word. So there's something happening. Lydia, be reasonable. The man can't even speak. How are you supposed to build a life with someone who can't communicate? He communicates fine. Better than you did, actually. He doesn't lie. Doesn't make promises he won't keep. Doesn't run when things get hard. He's damaged goods. So am I. So are you. So is everyone. Lydia stood up, signaling the conversation was over. Your 5 minutes are up. Leave. I'm not giving up. I love you, Lydia. I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean we can't fix this. You don't love me. You love the idea of me. The land, the potential, the chance to play savior to the struggling woman. But you don't love me. If you did, you'd have stayed. Thomas opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Something behind Lydia had caught his attention. She turned to see Rowan standing in the barn doorway, watching. He didn't move, didn't make any threatening gestures. Just stood there, silent and solid, his presence alone enough of a statement. Is that him? Thomas asked. That's Rowan. He looks dangerous. He is, to people who threaten what he cares about. Lydia looked at Thomas directly. Leave. Don't come back. We're done. Thomas stared at her for a long moment, then at Rowan, measuring something. Finally, he put his hat back on. You're making a mistake. When you realize it, don't expect me to be waiting. He drove off. Lydia stood on the porch, watching the dust settle, feeling the weight of the confrontation drain away. Rowan walked over, questioning. He wanted me back, said he was sorry, offered money and a future and all the things he should have offered before running away. She looked at Rowan. I said no. He nodded. Approval, maybe. Or just acknowledgement. He called you dangerous. Rowan made a gesture, true, sometimes. He said I was rebounding, using you to avoid dealing with what he did. Another gesture. Is that true? No. Maybe at first, a little, but not anymore. She sat down on the porch step, suddenly tired. I don't know what we are, Rowan, but I know it's not a rebound. It's not me using you to fill a hole Thomas left. It's something real. He sat beside her, wrote in his notebook. Real, but undefined. Yeah, is that enough for you? For now. He showed her the next line. Are you going to think about what I asked, the marriage question? I think about it all the time. I just don't know the answer yet. That's fair. They sat in comfortable silence as evening fell, both of them aware that Thomas's return had stirred up something that had been settling, forced them to define what they were to each other, instead of letting it exist in comfortable ambiguity. 2 days later, Robert Garrett made his move. He showed up at the ranch with Thomas and the sheriff, 3 men on horseback, looking official and determined. Lydia was in the garden when she heard the hoofbeats, looked up to see them riding in formation like some kind of delegation. Miss Cross, Garrett called out, we need to talk. About what? About irregularities in your ranch ownership. May we come in? Lydia's stomach tightened. What irregularities? Garrett dismounted, pulled papers from his saddlebag. According to county records, there's a lien on this property dating back 3 years. Unpaid taxes from when your father was still managing things. The amount is substantial, nearly $400 with interest. That's not possible. I paid off all the debts. The bank confirmed it. The bank confirmed you paid off your mortgage. This is a separate matter. A tax lien takes precedence over private debt. The county has the right to seize the property if it's not satisfied. Garrett's voice was sympathetic in a way that didn't reach his eyes. I'm sorry, Lydia, but unless you can pay this amount immediately, the county will foreclose and the property will go to auction. You're lying. There's no lien. Show her, Sheriff. The sheriff, looking uncomfortable, handed over official documents. Lydia scanned them, her heart sinking. The lien was real, registered 3 years ago, apparently overlooked in all the chaos of her mother's death and her father's decline. $417, due immediately. This is convenient timing, she said, looking at Garrett. You showing up with this right after Thomas tries to win me back and I refuse. The timing is unfortunate, but not suspicious. I've been researching property records throughout the county. This came up in my due diligence. Or you planted it, falsified records to create a debt that doesn't exist. That's a serious accusation. Garrett's voice hardened. Be careful what you say, Miss Cross. The sheriff is here to witness this legal matter. Rowan had appeared from the barn, alerted by the commotion. He walked over, reading the situation, his expression darkening as he understood what was happening. I don't have $400, Lydia said, hating how defeated she sounded. We just spent everything paying off the bank. I know, which is why I'm prepared to make an offer. Garrett pulled out another paper. I'll pay the lien in full. In exchange, you sign over the property to me. You and your father can stay here as long as he lives, free of charge. After he passes, you'll receive a settlement of $1,000 and assistance relocating wherever you choose. It's generous considering you're stealing my ranch. I'm offering you a way out of an impossible situation. Take it or face foreclosure and get nothing. Thomas stepped forward. Lydia, listen to him. This is the best deal you're going to get. At least this way you keep a roof over your head and your father doesn't have to move in his condition. You're in on this. Both of you plan this. We're trying to help you, Thomas said, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. You can't win this. The lien is legal. The debt is real. Take the deal before you lose everything." Lydia looked at Rowan. He was staring at the documents, his jaw tight with fury, hands clenched. He made a gesture. "Fight. Don't surrender." "I need time," she said, "to verify this lien, to find the money. You can't force me to decide right now." "You have 24 hours," Garrett said. "After that, the county moves forward with seizure proceedings. Sheriff, you're witness to this timeline." "I am," the sheriff said, still looking uncomfortable. "Miss Cross, I'm sorry, but the law is the law." They left, taking their ultimatum with them. Lydia stood in the yard, holding documents that felt like a death sentence, trying to breathe around the panic rising in her chest. "It's not real," she said finally. "It can't be. We would have known. The bank would have known." Rowan took the papers, studied them carefully. Then he wrote, "Looks official, but dates are suspicious, convenient." "You think it's fake?" "Think it's real but recently filed, backdated to look old, legal but fraudulent." "How do we prove that?" He wrote, "County Records Office, check original filings, look for signs of tampering." "That's a day's ride. We don't have time." "Then I go now, tonight, ride through darkness, check records at dawn." He was already moving toward the barn. "You stay here. Protect your father. Don't sign anything." "Rowan, wait." He turned back, wrote quickly, "Trust me, I'll find the truth." "What if you can't? What if the lien is real and there's no way to fight it?" He looked at her seriously, wrote, "Then we figure something else out. But we don't surrender. Not to them. Not ever." He was gone within the hour, riding Buck hard toward the county seat. Lydia watched him disappear into the gathering darkness, feeling helpless and furious and terrified all at once. Her father found her on the porch after sunset. He was having a good evening, clear-eyed and present. "Where's Rowan?" he asked. "Riding to check county records. Garrett's trying to steal the ranch with a fake lien." "Garrett's ambitious, always has been. Wants to own everything, control everyone." Her father sat beside her. "Your mother never trusted him. Mama was smart." "She was, and she'd be proud of you now. The way you've fought for this place, the way you've built something with Rowan." "We might lose it all anyway. If the lien is real and we can't pay, then you lose the land, but not what matters. The land is just dirt and grass, Lydia. What matters is the people on it, the life you build. That can happen anywhere." "You sound like you're ready to give up." "I'm ready to be practical. I'm dying. Slowly, but certainly. When I'm gone, this ranch becomes yours completely. And the question is whether you're going to spend your life tied to this specific piece of earth, or whether you're going to take what you've learned and build something new with Rowan wherever you end up." "I don't want to lose Mama's home." "Your mother's home was wherever your father was. The building didn't matter, the land didn't matter, the person mattered." He touched her hand. "Marry Rowan. Stop waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect circumstances. Life doesn't give you those. It gives you choices in imperfect situations. Choose him. Choose building something together. The rest will sort itself out." "What if he doesn't want that? What if I'm just convenient?" Her father laughed softly. "That boy looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. He'd burn down the world to keep you safe. If you think that's convenience, you're not paying attention." Rowan returned 30 hours later, exhausted and covered in trail dust, his horse lathered and stumbling. Lydia ran out to meet him as he dismounted. "What did you find?" He handed her a folder of papers, too tired to write. She opened it, found copies of county records with notes in Rowan's rough handwriting. The lien was real, but it had been filed only 2 weeks ago, backdated to look 3 years old. The signature supposedly authorizing it was her father's, but anyone could see it was forged. The whole thing was fraud, just sophisticated enough to look legitimate until someone checked the original documents. "We can prove it's fake," she said, reading through his notes. "We can show the sheriff." Rowan shook his head, wrote with shaking hands. "Sheriff knows. Or suspects. But he's bought. Garrett owns him. Won't help." "Then what do we do?" "Go public. Show everyone. Make it too obvious to ignore." "How?" He pointed to the town, made a gesture. "Church social, Sunday, tomorrow, everyone there." "You want to confront them in front of the whole town?" "Yes. Make them answer publicly. Make them defend the fraud where everyone can see." "That's risky. They might double down." make it worse. Or they fold, because public shame is worse than losing one ranch. He wrote, Garrett wants to look respectable. This makes him look like a thief. Lydia studied the papers, thinking through scenarios. It was risky. It might backfire, but doing nothing meant losing for certain. All right, we do it your way. The church social the next day was packed. Everyone in Blackwater Ridge and the surrounding ranches had turned out, drawn by news of the latest drama involving Lydia Cross and her silent partner. Nancy Pratt was holding court near the dessert table. Robert Garrett was talking with a group of businessmen, looking confident and untouchable. Thomas Mackenzie stood apart, looking conflicted. Lydia walked into the square with Rowan beside her, carrying the folder of documents. Conversation stuttered and stopped as people noticed them. Mayor Henderson approached, concerned. Lydia, what's this about? People are saying you're planning to make a scene. Not planning, doing, she raised her voice. Everyone, I need your attention. The square went quiet. All eyes turned to her. She felt Rowan's presence beside her, solid and supportive, giving her courage. 2 days ago, Robert Garrett came to my ranch with a tax lien demanding $400 or he'd seize my property. He claimed it was legitimate, registered 3 years ago, overdue. She held up the folder. I had Rowan ride to the county seat to check the records. Want to know what he found? Garrett's expression had gone carefully neutral. Miss Cross, this is not the time or place. The lien was filed 2 weeks ago, not 3 years. The date was falsified. The signature was forged. The whole thing is fraud, designed to steal my ranch when legitimate debt collection failed. She opened the folder, held up the documents. I have proof. Copies of the original filings showing the real date. Handwriting analysis showing the signature isn't my father's. Everything needed to prove Robert Garrett is a thief and a liar. The crowd erupted in whispers. Garrett stepped forward, his face flushed. This is slander. I'll have you arrested for defamation. Try it. I've got evidence. You've got nothing but expensive clothes and a fake reputation. Lydia looked around at the gathered community. He's been trying to steal my ranch for months. When I wouldn't marry him, when I wouldn't sell, when I paid off all legitimate debts, he created a fake one. He committed fraud. And he did it thinking no one would check, no one would fight back, no one would stand up to him because he's rich and powerful. You can't prove any of this, Garrett said, but his voice lacked conviction. I can. I will. And everyone here is going to know what kind of man you really are. She turned to the sheriff. Are you going to do your job and investigate this? Or are you going to keep pretending you don't see corruption when it's standing right in front of you? The sheriff looked between Lydia and Garrett, clearly torn. The whole town was watching, waiting to see which way he'd fall. Thomas stepped forward suddenly. She's telling the truth. Everyone turned to stare at him. I helped Garrett research the property records, Thomas continued, his voice carrying across the square. He told me he was looking for legitimate debts Lydia had overlooked. But 2 weeks ago, he asked me to witness a document filing at the county office. I didn't look closely at what it was. He said it was routine paperwork. But looking back, that must have been when he filed the fake lien. Shut up, Thomas, Garrett hissed. No, I've made enough mistakes. I hurt Lydia badly enough without helping you steal from her too. Thomas looked at the crowd. Garrett's been planning this for months, buying up small ranches, consolidating land, building an empire. Anyone who won't sell, he finds ways to force out. Lydia's just the latest target. You don't know what you're talking about, Garrett said, but people were backing away from him now, expressions shifting from curiosity to anger. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know you promised me a partnership if I helped you acquire the Cross Ranch. I know you've done this before to the Henderson property and the Yates place. I know you're corrupt. Thomas's voice was firm. And I'm not protecting you anymore. Henderson stepped forward. Is this true, Garrett? Did you forge documents to seize the Yates property? This is ridiculous. I'm a respected businessman, not some common criminal. Answer the question, Henderson said, his voice hard with authority. Garrett looked around at the hostile faces, calculating odds. Finally, his expression hardened into something cold and furious. Fine. Yes. I filed the lien. Yes, that the date was adjusted to make it look older. But it's not illegal, just creative paperwork. And frankly, Lydia Cross doesn't deserve that ranch. She's barely keeping it running. She's harboring a fugitive soldier. She's making a mockery of this community. I'm doing everyone a favor by taking it off her hands." The crowd's murmur grew louder, angry now. "You're admitting to fraud," Henderson said slowly, "in front of witnesses. Sheriff, arrest this man." On what charge?" Garrett demanded. "Creative accounting? Every businessman does it." "Forgery, fraud, attempted theft." Henderson's voice was steel. "You've just confessed to multiple crimes. You're done, Garrett." The sheriff, finally finding his spine, moved forward. "Robert Garrett, you're under arrest. Don't make this difficult." Garrett looked around wildly, seeing no allies, no escape. "You can't do this. I own half this county. I have lawyers, influence, power." "Had," Lydia corrected. "Past tense. You had those things. Now you're just a criminal who got caught." They led Garrett away in handcuffs, still protesting, still threatening. The crowd watched in stunned silence, processing what they'd just witnessed. Thomas approached Lydia cautiously. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For leaving you. For helping him. For being weak when you needed someone strong." "Why did you speak up? You could have stayed silent." "Because I realized something watching you fight. You're not the person who needs saving. You're the person who does the saving. You didn't need me to rescue you from your problems. You needed someone who'd stand beside you while you solved them yourself. That's what Rowan does. That's what I should have done." "Yeah, you should have." "For what it's worth, I think you found something real with him. Don't let pride or fear or whatever else is holding you back keep you from it." Thomas put his hat on. "I'm leaving, going back to Sacramento, but I wanted you to know I'm glad you won. You deserve it." He walked away, leaving Lydia standing in the town square, victorious and exhausted and aware that she'd just burned every bridge that might have led to a conventional future. Rowan touched her shoulder, questioning if she was all right. "I'm good, we're good." She looked at him. "We should go home." They rode back to the ranch in the late afternoon sun. The crisis finally, definitively over. Garrett was in jail. The fake lien was exposed. The ranch was secure. Everything they'd fought for was safe. Her father was on the porch when they arrived, waving. "How'd it go?" "We won. Garrett's arrested. The ranch is ours free and clear." "Good. That's good." He smiled vaguely. "Your mother will be pleased." Lydia didn't correct him, just helped him inside, got him settled, then came back out to where Rowan was unsaddling the horses. "My father's getting worse," she said. "He asked about my mother 3 times today. In a week or a month, he won't remember me at all." Rowan nodded, understanding. "When he's gone, I'll be alone here, running this place by myself, and that's fine, I can do it. But it'll be lonely." She took a breath. "So I'm saying yes. To what you asked, if you still want to." He looked at her sharply, questioning. "Marriage, partnership, whatever you want to call it. Legal protection for what we're building, like you said. Practical, unromantic, based on respect and shared purpose." She managed a smile. "Not exactly the fairy tale, but maybe better. More honest, at least." Rowan set down the saddle he'd been holding, walked over to her, made a gesture. She was sure? Really sure? "I'm sure." "Are you?" He nodded, then pulled her into a hug that lifted her off her feet, his silent laugh shaking them both. "We should do it soon," she said when he set her down. "Before my father forgets who I am. Give him one good memory to take with him." Rowan wrote quickly. "Tomorrow?" "Too fast. People will think I'm pregnant or desperate or both." "Next Sunday then, after church. Everyone already there." "You want a public wedding? After everything?" He wrote, "Want everyone to see we chose this, that it's real, not hiding or ashamed." "All right. Sunday, public and honest." She looked at him seriously. "No romance, no false promises, just partnership and commitment and building something together." He wrote one more line. "That's more than most people get. I'll take it." They spent the week preparing. Sarah helped Lydia alter her mother's wedding dress, taking it in, updating the style slightly. Henderson agreed to officiate. The Miller brothers helped clean up the ranch yard, making it presentable for the small gathering they planned. Her father had a good week, clear-minded more often than not. When Lydia told him about the wedding, he cried. "I'm so glad," he said. "So glad you found someone. That you won't be alone." "I won't be alone, Papa. Promise me you'll be happy. Or at least try to be. Don't let fear keep you from living." "I promise." The wedding was simple. They held it at the ranch rather than the church, standing in the yard where they'd first stood together months ago. Lydia wore her mother's dress. Rowan wore his only good clothes, his hair trimmed, his scars visible but somehow less noticeable than they'd once been. Her father gave her away, walking her across the yard with surprising steadiness. Henderson spoke about partnership and commitment and building futures together. When he asked for vows, Lydia spoke hers clearly. "I promise to stand beside you, to work with you, to face whatever comes with honesty and courage, to be your partner in all things, for as long as we both live." Rowan couldn't speak his vows, but he'd written them down. Henderson read them aloud. "I promise to protect you, to build with you, to give you truth even when it's difficult, to be worthy of your trust, your strength, your choice, for as long as I live." They exchanged simple rings, gold bands bought with money from the ranch's savings. When Henderson pronounced them married, Rowan kissed her carefully, a gentle press of lips that spoke of promise rather than passion. The gathered community applauded. Nancy Pratt was notably absent, but most of the town had come, bearing witness to something they still didn't fully understand but could no longer deny was real. At the small celebration afterward, Sarah cornered Lydia in the kitchen. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I'm content. Is that enough?" "For now, maybe. But Lydia, you're allowed to want more than contentment. You're allowed to want love. Love is complicated. This is simple. Simple is better." "If you say so." Sarah didn't look convinced. "Just don't close yourself off to possibility. You've already been through so much. Don't punish yourself by settling for less than you deserve." "I'm not settling. I'm being realistic." But later that night, after everyone had gone home and her father was asleep, and she and Rowan were sitting on the porch like they always did, she wondered if Sarah was right, if she was settling for safety when she could have reached for something more. "Do you think this will work?" she asked Rowan. "A marriage built on practicality instead of feeling." He wrote, "Most marriages start with feeling and end with practicality. We're just skipping ahead." "That's cynical. That's honest." He wrote more. "But it doesn't mean feelings can't develop. We're not promising they will, just that we're open to it if they do." "Are you open to it?" He looked at her for a long moment, then wrote, "I care about you, Lydia, more than I expected to, more than is probably smart. Is that feeling? I don't know, but it's real. I care about you too. It scares me." "Good. Means it matters." They sat in silence after that, not touching but close, two people who'd found each other in crisis and built something solid from wreckage and stubbornness and hope. Her father died 3 weeks later, peacefully, in his sleep, on a morning when the sun came up gold and promising just like always. Lydia found him in his chair by the window, looking out at the eastern pasture, gone to wherever her mother was waiting. She cried for hours. Not just for him, but for everything, the years of watching him fade, the loss of the man he'd been, the end of her childhood family. Rowan held her through it, silent and steady, letting her break without trying to fix it. They buried her father next to her mother in the small cemetery outside town. The whole community came, paying respects to a man most of them had forgotten was still alive. Henderson gave a brief eulogy. Sarah squeezed Lydia's hand. Even Nancy Pratt showed up, her expression something like genuine sympathy for once. After the funeral, Lydia and Rowan went home to the ranch that was now fully theirs. No parents, no past claiming space, just them and the future they were building. "I don't know how to do this," Lydia said that night. "Be a wife. Run a ranch without my father's name attached to it. Be the head of a household instead of someone's daughter." Rowan wrote, "Same way you've done everything else. One day at a time, making it up as you go." That doesn't sound very confident. It's realistic. No one knows what they're doing. We just pretend better as we get older. Despite everything, she laughed. "When did you become wise?" "About 5 minutes ago. Could wear off any time." They sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. aware that they'd reached the end of something and the beginning of something else, and neither of them was sure what that meant. 6 months later, the ranch was thriving. They'd hired 2 ranch hands with the money left over from Harrow's reward. They'd fixed the irrigation properly, rotated the cattle through better pastures, started a vegetable garden that actually produced food. The place looked alive again, functional, profitable even. Rowan had learned to communicate more fluidly, his gestures becoming a language Lydia understood instinctively. They developed rhythms and routines, inside jokes that didn't need words. They worked together like parts of a machine, efficient and coordinated. And slowly, carefully, something else had developed. Touches that lingered longer than necessary. Looks that meant more than partnership. Moments late at night on the porch, when the space between them felt charged with possibility, neither was quite brave enough to act on. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, Lydia found Rowan in the barn with his journal, drawing. She sat beside him, watched his pencil move across the page, creating landscapes and faces with surprising skill. "You're good at this," she said. He shrugged. "Something to do with quiet moments. Can I ask you something?" He nodded, setting down the pencil. "Are you happy? Here, with me, with this life we've built?" He considered the question seriously, then wrote, "Happy is complicated, but content, yes. At peace, mostly. Building something that matters with someone who matters, that's more than I expected to have." "It's more than I expected, too." She paused. "But Sarah keeps asking if I'm happy or just comfortable, and I don't know the answer." "What's the difference?" "Happy is wanting what you have. Comfortable is just not wanting to risk losing it." He wrote, "Which are you?" "I don't know. Both, maybe." She looked at him directly. "What would make you happy? If you could have anything?" He wrote slowly, carefully. "This, but with less fear, less waiting for it to fall apart, less certainty that good things end." "You think this will end?" "Everything ends eventually. People leave or die or change. I just want to enjoy what we have while we have it, instead of bracing for loss." "That's very Buddhist." "That's very realistic." He wrote more. "But if I'm being completely honest, I'd also like to kiss my wife without overthinking whether it crosses a line we agreed not to cross." Lydia felt her breath catch. "You want to kiss me?" "I've wanted to kiss you for months, but we said partnership, not romance, practical, not emotional. I'm trying to respect that." "What if I'm tired of practical?" He looked at her seriously. "Are you?" "I don't know, maybe. The partnership works. We're good together, but Sarah's right. I'm allowed to want more. And I think I do want more. With you. If you want that too." "I do." "But what if it ruins what we have? What if we try for romance and it doesn't work and we lose the partnership?" He wrote, "Or we try for romance and it does work and we get both. Risk either way." "You're willing to risk it?" "I'm willing to risk a lot for you. Haven't I proven that already?" She thought about everything they'd been through, the auction, the standoff with Harrow, the fraud, the wedding, building a life from nothing. He'd risked everything multiple times, and she'd been so focused on not asking for more that she hadn't noticed he'd been offering it all along. "Kiss me," she said. He set down the journal, turned to face her fully. His hand came up to cup her face, careful and questioning. She leaned into the touch, permission and invitation. When he kissed her, it wasn't careful or gentle. It was 6 months of restraint breaking, want that had been held back finally allowed to surface. His hand tangled in her hair. Her fingers gripped his shirt. They kissed like people starving, like they'd been waiting for this and hadn't realized how much until it was happening. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rowan was smiling that rare, full smile that transformed his scarred face into something beautiful. He wrote shakily, "Still think romance will ruin the partnership?" "I think we should find out." They did find out. Slowly, carefully, learning each other in new ways while keeping what had worked before. The partnership remained solid. They still worked together, still made decisions jointly, still operated as equals. But now there was tenderness too. Affection freely given. Intimacy earned through trust and time. It wasn't perfect. Rowan still had nightmares sometimes, waking up silent and shaking. Lydia still had moments of grief for her father, for her mother, for the easier life she'd once imagined. They argued occasionally, frustrated by miscommunication or stubbornness or just the difficulty of building a life together. But it was real and honest, and more than either of them had dared to hope for. A year after the wedding, Lydia stood in the same yard where she'd once stood in her mother's dress, humiliated and abandoned. Now she stood in work clothes, mud on her boots, watching Rowan work with Spitfire in the far pasture. The stallion had finally been fully gentled, responding to Rowan's patient handling, proving that even the most damaged things could heal with time and care. Sarah rode up, saw Lydia watching, and smiled. "Still think you settled for practical?" "I think practical turned into something better when I wasn't looking." "You're happy." "I am, surprisingly, genuinely happy." Lydia looked at her friend. "I never thought I'd say that after everything that happened, but I am." "You deserve it. You fought for it. We fought for it, me and Rowan together." "That's what makes it work," Sarah said. "You're not trying to save each other. You're just building something together. That's what lasts." After Sarah left, Rowan came back to the house. He was dirty and tired and grinning, proud of the progress with the stallion. Lydia met him on the porch with water and a kiss, both equally necessary. He pulled her close, made a gesture. "Happy?" "Very," she said. "You?" He nodded, made another gesture. "This is home. You are home." "Yeah," she said, leaning into his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "This is home. We're home." They stood there in the yard where everything had begun. Two broken people who'd found each other and built something solid from damage and defiance and stubborn hope. The ranch stretched around them, thriving under their joint care. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but no longer frightening. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Partners, equals, husband and wife in the truest sense. Not because some ceremony had declared it, but because they'd chosen it every single day since that first handshake in the auction yard. And that, Lydia thought, was more than worth everything she'd lost to get here. The sun set gold and promising, just like always. But now she wasn't watching it alone, wondering if she'd survived the night. Now she was standing beside someone who'd proven he'd stand through anything with her, building futures out of fire and faith and fierce determination. They went inside together as darkness fell, closing the door on the past and opening themselves to whatever came next, brave enough now to believe it might actually be good.